listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne, and I'm very excited for this one. We've got a great topic and a full house. We've got Mo working the controls on this episode.
Hello.
Got Dalton in the building. Got Chris here for this episode, and we are all sitting down with Mike Kondus, and you are the mastermind behind the Alaska Outdoors Mentorship Program. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming here and spending the evening with us. I'm excited for this conversation. So
awesome. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Before we've got some great stories to get to from a couple guys here across the table about the close of bear bait season and how that last weekend went. But before we get to that, give like a 30-second breakdown kind of what you do or what the Alaska Outdoor Mentorship Program is geared to do, and then we'll revisit it later.
Okay. Yeah. Our main goal and vision is to ensure that people that are either experienced hunters and are new to Alaska, or people that are new to hunting that live here in Alaska, could be military or off post, doesn't matter. We just want to ensure that they can have they're educated to the point where they could have a safe, legal, and ethical and successful hunt. We just want to try to set people up for success.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's a huge thing, honestly, because especially here in the state of Alaska, and a large backstory to the Northern Hunter here as well is my experiences coming up here as a soldier and experiencing how hard it is to find, that good quality hunting and education content. Now there's good quality stuff. I wouldn't say that. There's good quality stuff. If you go to like Fish and Game's website, there's a lot of availability there, but trying to navigate that website can be hard sometimes, especially when you're new. And having, building a community is a big thing here. A lot of these guys, especially soldiers, when they come up here, airmen, we were just talking earlier, having spent holidays in your barracks room, it's not a fun. So,
and it's hard. For military, especially, a lot of them have a difficult time connecting with longtime Alaskans outside the gate. They're connecting with their friends that are on post. They're here for a very short time, 2 or 3 year stint. And everybody's from the lower 48. So they're used to hunting from the tree stand in Nebraska, whitetail or hunting in the Rockies, anything like that. But, it takes a few years to really figure out how to do it right here.
Yeah.
And, we're trying to help accelerate that process for them, because this could be their best duty station ever. This is a dream to come in Alaska. If you're a hunter and you're in Alaska, it's a dream, and you want to take advantage of all the opportunities. So we're trying to accelerate that process, set them up for success. You hear a lot of horror stories out there with people.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're breaking the law or tearing up the trails or, shooting next to somebody's cabin or shooting the wrong animal, just a lot of things. Or even worse, some of these trips end up being fatal because they weren't prepared for that type of hunt. So we're trying to prevent some of those things from happening.
Well, awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate what you guys have done. I've talked to you a couple times now. I'm excited to have you on the show to advertise for you and let you kind of, hopefully we can get, people that might not have heard of it to come show up, because I think what you guys are doing over there is a great thing. And I'm excited to talk about the backstory to it and everything like that. Before we get into that, if you guys are a long-term listener of the show, or you just found us and you like what you're hearing, if you would be so kind as to give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We don't do any kind of marketing or any kind of paid, outreach. So that's really the only way we have to get this show in front of other people and new listeners. So 5 stars is always best if you like what you're hearing, and a written review goes a long way. We love reading written reviews, and it helps other people understand what they're going to hear. There's always a share button next to anything we post on social media, or next to any of these podcast episodes on any platform. There's a share button. If you think somebody might enjoy the content we share on one of these episodes, share it with a friend and help us get the word out, because we're very excited to be also helping newer hunters to the state of Alaska get out there and be successful and be safe. That's a big one. We preach on safety here a lot. So bear baiting season also closed up. This is actually, this episode's coming out, 2 weeks into June, I think the 8th, maybe? like that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's about a week into July.
Or sorry, July. Yeah, I said June.
Yeah. Man, month left of bear baiting season. Got excited.
Wait, it's still June?
If I had my way, it would be.
Yeah.
Still June. Why am I here?
Yeah. So, yep, bear baiting season's closed. We shared the episode last week with you two's success story from the second to last weekend, but you teased at the end you were heading back out to hunt.
Oh, yeah.
And I did as well. I went out. I didn't sit because I was driving for work and various other things. So I got out there. I snuck into just about every single one I'd set up, and there's action. But unfortunately, there wasn't anything sitting there when I walked in. So I will be pushing it hard next year. And I did some very good intel this year. So that's a success for me, if you ask me. I'll just pass this to Chris.
I'm
going to make you go first. Tell us about so you missed the last episode because you were out doing, not talking. So
well, yeah, I had to get out. I had to be out.
Yep. So why don't you break down kind of what happened over the last 2 weeks? We ain't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild.
Oh, I have, but these guys haven't. The listeners haven't.
So Carlito and I went out to check our baits.
Yes.
He was getting ready to go to Sitka on he's got like a annual fishing trip that he does down in Sitka with a buddy of ours. And so we went out and we went to pull baits, and we had some action on one of the baits, pretty good action. And we're like, okay, well, next year we're down to the wire, and that one's kind of sketchy for a guy to run solo. And we don't play that game. That's not really, I've done that, and it's too sketchy. It's too far out, and you ride the boat, and you walk the boat, and it's a 2-man operation, but it's downstream. So if anything goes awry, you're
really done.
So we're like, we're going to chalk that one. And I had set a new bait. I actually set like an exploratory bait, went and pulled a permit, set an exploratory bait. So we had some camera glitches on that one. I think I had mentioned that before.
You did, yeah.
So we were like, okay, we got this camera thing situated. And so I told Carlito, I was like, leave your boat, because mine was down and all that jazz. So I was like, I'm going to revisit this bait. So we get our camera situation, we thought, figured out. So we have like no intel on this bait. It's a new bait. First time we set it this year. And you can tell bears have been thumping it because it was empty twice, right? And so we stalked it again. And I'm like, I'm going to hit this again. So I go check it again, and it's just thumped again. And I'm like, okay, bait it up. Camera's not working. So we don't have a spare camera. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And so a buddy of ours he's got a family and stuff, doesn't get an opportunity to get out much. Carl and I talked about it, and I was like, I want to get him an opportunity to get some bears, and they like bear meat.
Sure.
Then he's like, hey, you want to go? And he's like, are you serious? He's just pumped. He's like, really, man? Me? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, you need some bears.
Yeah.
And he's just stoked. He, like I say, he doesn't get out. But so we go up, and I'm like, we might have this camera thing figured out. So we go up, the bait's thumped again. There's no pictures. So we have zero intel on this bait all season. Like, we don't know what's going on in there. So I tell him, like, all right, well, let's stink it up. We'll sit. He's like, I don't even care, man. I'm so happy to be out here. Let's do it. Right. So we sit in there, and we end up getting boar runs in, young boar, and this sow like trees him, and she's pretty big. She's 6 foot and good bear. And so she trees him, and he's like, what do I do? And I was like, well, I'm like, you want to shoot both of them? And I'm like, she looked pretty old. Like, I don't know what he was trying to breed her in his final moments. But he was like, what do you think about shooting a sow? And I'm like, I would shoot that sow. I'm like, I don't think she's breeding anymore. Like, and she wasn't having any of his nonsense. So they both came up and huffed and did their, they had some aggressive behavior. I think he had been ticking her off pretty good. And so
Were you guys sitting on the ground or in trees?
No, we were in tree stands, but we had these tree stands pretty low, like you got going on on the one. And and he hasn't had a lot of bear action. He shot one bear in his whole time of hunting, and he's hunted quite a bit. So he's like, man, those are good looking bears. I'm like, both those bears are good. And I was like, oh, let the work begin. So he's like, I'm going to shoot him first. And I said, well, don't do that. He's interested in her. And I said, shoot her first. So he dumps her. She runs behind the bait, falls down and dies. And I don't know if you guys ever seen this before. It's pretty interesting. So we hear him. He splits, runs back there and starts mauling her while she's dying. And we didn't really know that at the time, but I could hear some commotion. And I'm like, I think he's attacking her. So he
don't you die on me.
Yeah. This isn't finished. So then he rolls back in and I'm like, yep, there you go. And so he thumps him and he gets he got a really good hit on her. He gets like a mediocre hit on him and he runs off behind the bait. And I'm like, let's sit, don't do anything. And he's pretty pumped. You could see he's pretty reactive. Like, wow, I didn't really know I was going to get bears if we came up here. He's like, this is panning out. So I'm like, just stay calm. And he's trying to dig through his backpack. I'm like, don't do any of this. And I'm like, you want to listen because you can miss stuff. And so I noticed there's not a lot going on, but I keep kind of hearing sticks breaking. Well, I had looked over and his gun was out of battery. He had like a stovepipe and a double feed because he was running a semi-auto.
Yep.
And cool setup for what we were doing. It didn't quite have all the bugs worked out.
I'll say they can work well, but you got to work the bugs out ahead of time.
And so I'm like, okay. And he's like, man, what do we do? And I'm like, well, we've sat long enough. Oh, we're going to go down there and find him. And he's like, okay. So we go to the bottom of the tree and he's antsy. He pulls his pistol out. I'm like, you should put that away. I was like, don't shoot me on accident. So I get my rifle and he's like, this thing's still out of battery. I'm like, ditch that thing. It's just it's a tree anchor. You're going to get hung up when we go back here. I was like, follow me. So we go in there. We're looking around. We find her. There's like fur blowing up on the bushes that he had like gnawed out. The wind picked it up and threw it up and luckily I don't think he did anything too bad. She had a really good hide on her and she was big. And so we hear a stick break and he's like, did you hear that? I'm like, yeah, I heard it. We stand there and I get this glimpse of this bear like walking off. And so I'm like, all right, I take off after this bear and I see him like go through this, like there's a big fallen timber, like kind of a field. And I start going through there. I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like, and so I get another glimpse of him and I see some grass coming up and I go to walk back in there and I get like the glimpse of like the tail end of him. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I go in a straight line and I get up to this timber pile and I'm looking over this timber pile and I don't realize it. He's like from me to you, like up under this timber pile, like paws facing me. Like I see his paws in the grass and I'm like, wait a minute. And I put the muzzle down and next thing I know, he's like crawling out of there towards me. And I hammered him. He fell down, went to get back up, and I fed him a few more. We went to the pistol because I was like, I'm not going to sit here and play with this bolt action. Like, I'm not brave. I'm not brave enough for this game.
Right.
And I've got nowhere to run. I'll fall on my face if I try to get out of here in a hurry.
Oh boy,
you're gonna have me just where you want me. So, I'm like, yep. So we got to work on those. That was pretty cool. He was really pumped on that, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it was really intimidating because we had no intel. And he's like, man, this is really tough. This is a tough mental game sitting here not knowing what. I'm like, oh yeah. And so I told him, I said, I think that most likely he's probably the biggest boar here. She was pretty dominant. They've probably just been piled up on this, eating this bait, and this is it. And he's like, well, if you want to hunt again, man, I'll come back and I'll help you if you want to get a bear. I'm like, whatever. Like, I already got a good bear. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
So we let a day simmer down, and he's bugging me like, you want to go again? I'm like, let's go, man. Let's do it. Like, so we pack up, we head out there. We had to reset the camera And so we're like, we thought maybe we might have this time, right? Me and Carlito couldn't figure it out, but him and I, he's pretty slick. So we and Carl's like, that camera doesn't work. Deep six that thing. I'm so done with those cameras. So we go back up again, no pictures, and it looked like something had been in there. So we go up, we sit for like 4 hours. There's nothing going on. I'm like, yeah, I think this thing's smoked, but we're here and we're a long way out. You want to sit? He's like, I'll sit all night. He's like, I'll sit till tomorrow. I don't care. Yeah. I'm like, well, if you're that pumped, I can't. We're going to do it. So I tell him like, hey, you got any caffeine on you? He's like, what? I'm like, I forgot Red Bull. He's like, yeah, I got a Red Bull in the boat. And I'm like, where's that? What do you want for it? And he's like, well, sounds pretty good right now. I said, well, let's go smoke that thing. Let's split that thing. He's like, oh yeah, I'll split it with you, man. I'm like, yeah, let's run down there. Let's grab a couple of things. We're going to sit here. So we go to the boat. I leave my rifle up in the tree stand, right?
Uh-oh.
He leaves his rifle up in the tree stand. He's like, I'm going to leave mine here too. You're on the gun. I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. We go down there. We're making a pretty good amount of ruckus. I knock a bunch of stuff over. Like I tell him like, we don't want to be making a lot of noise on the boat, just knocking all this stuff over. He's like, yeah, okay.
Naturally.
And like we were pretty loud, and that the bank's not real far from the tree stand on that one. And so we get all tuned up, and I go to walk back in there, and I'm walking in and not really paying attention. He's a little ways behind me, and I see this brown thing on the bait, and I'm like, oh no. And at first I thought it was a grizzly, and I'm like, I don't like this. Like, we've made enough noise. We've been in here. We're foreign. This thing doesn't care.
Yeah.
And so
that's the grizzly you don't want.
yeah. And that's literally what I thought it was. In fact, one of my buddies, when I had that thing rolled up after all this, he's like, oh, you got a grizz. I'm like, no, that's a black bear.
Yeah.
So this thing like just stands up and stares at me. And I'm like, that is such a nice bear. Like nice cinnamon bear, dark legs. And I'm like, so I pull my pistol and it like woofs at us. And so I go up the tree and I'm like, come on, dude. And he's like so scared to come up the tree. I'm like, I got you, dude. If that thing comes, it's, I'll knock it out. Like, and he's like, oh, okay, man. I'm like, just get up here. And it just didn't even care. It's just piled up on that food, just eating. And we're maybe 10 yards from the bait on that one, just to give some perspective here. And like he starts coming up the tree stand, it stands back up, and I have a shot, but I don't want to shoot with his head under my muzzle climbing up the tree.
Yeah.
So he gets up in the tree, and it didn't really give me, it wouldn't stand up. So, and I hate shooting bears laying down. I don't like that game. Yeah. But he had positioned, there's like enough of a dugout now from them just digging this spot out that his body, the front of his body was actually higher than the rear of his body. He was kind of had his lower body in that hole. And I'm like, he's given me enough exposure here to hit him. And so I dumped a shot. He got up, ran towards us, and I rechambered another round in that bolt gun and hit him with the second one. And then my buddy's like, holy mackerel. He's like, that's enough adrenaline for 3 days. And I was like, well, here we go again. And and I'm like, no way. I didn't expect that. So we went to work on that. That bear ended up being 6'4", nose to tail.
Nice.
Beautiful bear.
I love the hide on that thing, by the way.
Yeah.
That is one of the prettiest color phases I think I've seen.
I'm really stoked on it.
Yeah. The way it changes shade throughout the body. I mean, it's
gorgeous.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was. I was really stoked on that. I'm very thankful for that bear. But and then I thought it had rubs because it was missing fur in some spots. Well, this thing was all scarred up, like current battle wounds. It was a big boar. A couple people we know kind of laid eyes on it. I had 2 guys estimate that bear was probably about 14 years old just from looking at it. All the teeth were gone. The front canines were broken. Like the rubbed all the way through to like the core to the roots. Some teeth missing. It had missing teeth like that had fallen out.
Yeah.
Like abscesses. It was wild. It was really old. It was bit in the mouth. So it had like teeth marks on the tongue, like it had been bit in the mouth recently.
Mhm.
It had like an active infection. It was pretty wild. I mean, this thing had like battle wounds from head to toe.
Yeah.
And and I was like kind of initially bummed about the damage, but then I'm like, you know what? This is all character. These aren't rubs. These are like battle wounds. And I'm like, and yeah, one of the guys I was talking is like, man, I wish when my teeth got this bad, someone would take me out, man.
Yeah. Right.
But no, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So
that's awesome.
Yep. And that was about it. We sat, we did some calling. And we had a really good close to the season.
Good.
I can't complain.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been a very good year. So
well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because last time you were like, man, this season's just not been going well for me. I don't know what's up with it.
Well, yeah, and then I caught myself too. I was 2 weeks later. Just shot a nice bear. I'm like, man. I mean, we're pretty spoiled with bear baiting, and like it's a long season. We get out a lot, and like it has been a trying year. But
you know, everybody down in the lower 48 that has like a once in a 10-year draw permit.
Yeah,
they're just cursing me listening to this.
Like, oh, this guy had a bad year. Yeah. I'm sure he did. Yeah,
yeah.
We got a comment about that in one of the emails. Actually.
About me?
No, not about you in general, but just yeah.
I could respect it if it was.
I'm sure he'll hear this one. He might make a comment.
I'd be that guy. Like, man, tell that guy to shut up. No, but it turned out to be a really good season. And then I skipped the show. Was it last week?
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I gotta hunt. I just gotta.
Yeah.
And I was pretty done by the time. That's what I wanted. I wanted that done feeling.
Right.
Done. Time to move on to all the stuff I don't want to do.
Well, and that's what's funny. So like, cause you know a little bit about what I've been up to this year.
Yeah.
You know, and like, and like I mentioned it in previous episodes, you know, I'm doing a 100% strategy change, you know, from what I've always done prior. And a lot of that is to get around my work stuff, because May, June is my busy time. Like that's the busiest time for my year. And so talking to
that's the best time to be baiting too.
I know. So talking to old timers that have worked the same schedule as me for a long time, also really adamant about hunting and everything like that. And, you know, that's what kind of led me towards focusing more on spot and stalk in the earlier season, which led to my wife's bear. But what I can do is I can sympathize with your camera issues, because I ran several testers this year. Well, I shouldn't say I ran several. My family ran several. And it was devastating. I had one where I set up in an area where I was all alone. No, I'm all alone, for a fact. And I'm like, there's no way. I'll check it in, you know, a couple weeks. It's going to take them some time to find it. You know, it's going to take them, you know, when you're in the pressured areas, you know, they're just wandering through anyways. But I did what I normally do, you know, set up on game trails and look for sign and all that jazz, right? They came in and cleaned out 100 pounds of food within 6 days of me setting it.
Oh yeah.
And I went in there, went to hunt, didn't see anything on the ground, pulled what I needed to for this weekend, come back, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have bear movie night. There's a crater where the dog food was.
That's
there
good.
wasn't a kernel anywhere.
That is good.
And bait ball in the tree. I hung that thing 20, 25 feet up, something like that. Crazy high, crazy high. Down, gone. Like they got it. Everything I'd put out there. I left one of those. We just talked about this in the last episode, but I left one of those cans, the tar cans, as my flag. I was planning on getting out there sooner than I did, but it's just laying there in the middle of the crater, completely cleaned out. No tar, no nothing in the middle of it. Right there in the middle of the crater. And I'm like, oh, okay. Take that home with me. Chewed up a little bit, but I got a couple of videos. And that's it.
Were they
a few videos.
Were they uplifting?
Every video had multiple bears in it.
Dude.
All black bears.
So you reminded me of something with the camera thing. Dalton and I had this where we had camera issues. Not like this though. Not as bad as this bait.
Mm-hmm. I had worse camera issues this year.
Yeah. So, and I love my wife, man. One of us has to be slick. So she's awesome. So we're sitting the other morning, and she's like, "It's a beautiful bear." She's like, "I am so stoked," and I'm like, "Thanks, babe," you know. And she's like, where's that camera at? And I was like, oh, I deep sixed it. She's like, what's that mean? I was like, I don't know. Carl told me deep six it. I know what he meant. I was like, it's to the bottom of the trash can.
Right.
She's like, where's that memory card at?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I start digging for it. I'm like, why? She's like, just give it to me. I'm like, okay. I was like, well, there's no pictures on it. She's like, yeah. Let me see it. So she gets and puts it in her laptop, and she's like digging in that thing. She's like, there's pictures on this card.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what? And so I'm thinking, all right, he shot the boar in the sow. I shot that good boar, 6'4" cinnamon. I'm like, that's it for that bait.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. She's sitting there. She's like, oh, that's a big bear. I'm like, what? Hey, what are you doing? I go over there. Should I sit next to her? And she's like, she got into that card. She thinks we had like a software issue.
Oh.
There was loads of bears on that memory card.
Yeah.
That's a brand new bait.
Yeah.
And big bears.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing and it's kind of like, you're like, am I alone or is there a lot of people around here? It's like Carl always says, you want big sheep, you got to let some die of old age.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm pretty alone in that spot.
Yeah.
There's some old surly, not bear rug bears
Right.
in there. Good, respectable, but you wouldn't want to take them to the taxidermist.
It's a little more sewing than you want to pay for.
Yeah, a little more paint and clay than what a guy might bargain for. But no. And so, but I was so stoked that she took that upon herself to because I mean, and there was loads of pictures, and I was like, oh yeah. And I think had I known that, I would have hammered that bait.
Yeah, I know. Dude, I was kicking myself so hard. I'm like, why didn't I come check this the week after? But it's what happens, man.
Yeah, she's like so slick. She's like, that card doesn't go to that camera, and that's not compatible with iPhones. I'm like, well, how do you know this? She's like, oh, just read the website. It says that it recommends this. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I have you.
Yeah. No, I need new cameras for sure. Mine, they've had problems before, but this was the last straw.
What do you have?
I don't even know. It's not the Muddies, but
tell
what
me.
is
Are they
it?
Brownings?
They're I bought a 4-pack for $80. They're those ones. I'll tell
Oh,
you.
that's
That
5
works.
point, or what's those ones? They're the old. They're the
They're not Muddies, but they're similar in quality.
Yeah.
Stealth cams?
Stealth cams,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's the-
But like the low end stealth cams,
Yeah.
and they've worked. Like I've tried other ones, and it's like these ones just they worked. So I never had a means to replace them. And this year, one of my cameras was 15 feet from the bait. Yeah, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Aimed perfectly. I'm real meticulous about aiming my cameras and making sure the right angle and everything. Because with those, especially cheaper cameras, you want to make sure that with the trigger and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And just didn't go off.
Yeah.
And last year I had the same problem. It would take pictures. Like I would have one of me walking into the bait to go, put something near the barrel or restock food, and then the very next video would be me walking into the bait with different clothing on a different day.
Yeah.
It wouldn't catch me coming back out. It wouldn't catch any action in between. And just between that and this year, they're getting deep six.
Yeah.
So, but
My old Browning camera finally just quit.
did it finally die?
That one on.
I'm not a fan of the Brownings. I used to be.
You've had that one for like 8 years. Huh?
I've had that one for a
Yeah.
long, long time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Chris. You said you used to be.
that's
Yeah.
I used to have those, and I've just had I had a really good string of luck with those, and then I had a really bad string of luck with those.
Well, see,
Mhm.
And I got a stealth cam that's now. I remember I was on here a couple episodes back. I'm like, I've never had bears mess with my cameras. Like, dude, they tore them down this year and like broke the hanging brackets off of them. I'm like, what the heck? Like, so what I'm going to do next year, because those cameras are so reliable, is I'm going to buy the metal bear boxes
Mhm.
Yes.
and then just set it in there,
Yeah.
lag it, and then just set it in there because there's nothing to strap it with anymore because the buckles are broke.
right.
The door's missing, and like the card. I went in like a couple weeks ago, and the memory card's gone, and I'm like, dude, did someone steal my memory card? And I like spin around. It's like 6 feet, like it shot out of the camera.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So I'm like, I'm putting these things in boxes next year. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna lag them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those cameras are those are stealth cams.
That's what your dad does, right, Mo? Didn't he use like the electrical boxes or something?
No, he bought actual boxes for some of of his cameras.
Yeah, they make like a bear box.
Yeah.
And then he made one out of an ammo can one time.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard of the ammo can trick.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the companies make. Like,
I think Stealth Cam makes.
They might.
They probably do. Yeah.
Makes,
he
steel
uses
boxes.
Moultrie, and I've become a bigger fan of Moultrie the more I've used them.
Yeah.
They're reliable. They're a little bit more money, but they've been reliable.
Yeah.
And I've got the cheaper, smaller ones, the 42s. They're small, take like 4 batteries. And but anyway, but you can usually those brands make boxes for the camera.
Yeah. The one thing I will say with Stealth Cam that I've got to give them is their battery life is insane.
It is.
Because I took 1 year ones off of my bear bait. My wife, before she was my wife, had a break-in at her cabin, and I put trail cams outside of her house, same ones from my bear bait that year, same batteries, and it was still alive the next year when I went to go set my bear baits again. I changed the batteries. Don't get me wrong, but like through the winter, through everything, I was impressed. So I can't take that away from them. They do have good battery life.
What's crazy is we talk about trail cams and quality gear and all this kind of stuff. Some of the best cameras that I've ever used are like, it says made in China on the website. Okay,
right.
It's ridiculous, but it's like you'd think it'd be either the same thing or worse.
Yeah,
like the cam parks is specifically what I'm talking about. I've seen more and more of them, and they
like
always take good pictures. There's there's a bear in almost every picture. The batteries last forever. They work really well, and I don't know what gives because even my Moultries are kind of finicky if you don't set them up just right.
I've heard great things about those cam parks. That's actually what I'm looking at getting for next year.
And I have a couple of the little minis, and I like one of them. I think got hit by a bear and got rain in it, and so like half the buttons in it don't work anymore. So you can't change the date and time.
Just got to do your calculations.
Yeah, well, one of them set right, so you can just like okay.
I hate that when you're judging what time the bear came in based on when the last picture of you was, and you're doing your math.
Yeah. Well, I almost always set 2 cameras. That helps eliminate issues. Although, not always.
Yeah.
Set up 2 cameras on a bait this year, and both of them failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the one that failed and the one that just kept getting set off by a swinging branch in the wind. And so I had like a million videos of a swinging branch in the wind.
If that branch is far away, that means that camera's working right.
Apparently, yeah.
But anyway.
That one on the creek, I have that old Gamekeeper that's like a mossy oak camo pattern. I've had that one for like 5 years, and it takes the dumpiest pictures ever. It's horrible. The lighting is awful. Trigger distance is terrible. I've just had it forever, and it's always been a backup. Like, all right, well, if one gets munched, I'll just put this one up as a placeholder. Yeah. And then I also had that old Primo's level Proof 2 or something like that. It wasn't the cheap one, but it was the next one up. And that one quit while I was gone, and you and Tabitha were working.
We got it to work again.
Well, now the last 2.5 weeks of the season, they were both taking pictures crazy. Like, I mean, they were taking pictures
There's
round the
something weird
clock.
with that Primos. I don't know what happened, but we got it going again. And both of them, like we messed with them.
Yeah.
We messed with them a bunch the first time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got them to where they said they were taking pictures, walked away. Came back, a week later? Nothing.
Yeah.
Got them going again.
So the last 2.5 weeks, they were working great.
Well, that's good. But
well, I guess don't give up on the cameras too quick.
Yeah,
that's
but the other one
in a bear box next year.
The other
only one I got that works.
The other one that Chris and I put out with that old Browning cam, I ditched it, and then I went and bought. So Frontier has all 3 levels of Browning cameras, and I bought the next one up.
Nice,
and it works really, really good.
It
takes really nice.
I'm thinking about getting a Browning and a cam park for next year.
It is really nice.
Yeah. Because I've seen the clarity on those ones is what I like. Even when the light's not perfect.
The trigger distance is like 85 feet.
Yeah.
It's nice. Anyway.
So you had a pretty good weekend last weekend at the bait too, eh?
I did. Yeah. My wife and I went out and cleaned up one of them. There's a couple bears, but the numbers aren't what they have been at that spot. And so we'd already killed one out of it the week prior. And so I said, well, I know there's other bears at the other spot where Tabitha shot her bear, and so let's just clean this one up, and then we'll go to that one. So we did, and got in there. Again, it was like 95 degrees, and you're wearing leather boots and the thinnest socks you have, and your feet still feel like they're in just an oven. It was
so
terrible.
Hot in there.
And there was no wind, and the bugs were just atrocious.
There's no shade.
No, there's no shade. So we started sitting about 6:30, and we're looking through all the pictures, and I think that Primo's cam had like 3,500 pictures on it.
Jeez.
So it took me, and it had been 6.5 days since we'd been there. There was there was no bait left, period, nothing left. It was down to the dirt, and they were just digging a hole. So anyway, sit down, go through all the pictures, which takes me like 45 minutes and 10% of my phone battery to do all that. And there had been a huge grizzly bear that had moved in. And so we're kind of waiting on him and thinking about, okay, is he going to come back? What time has he been here? And there was 6 or 7 black bears, and then there was a really big black bear that was on the camera. And I'm looking at, I was looking at the grizzly bear thinking, it looks like a nice bear. Like he looks decent, he's not a monstrous body, but his face looks good. He looks like a boar. And then I see this black bear, and the grizzly bear is not a whole lot bigger than this black bear. And I thought, oh, okay, well, this kind of puts it into perspective. That grizzly bear isn't all that impressive, and this black bear is really, really impressive for a black bear. And so we sat, started about 6:30, and about 10 o'clock, a little color-phased black bear that looked like he had the mange showed up. And he'd walk up to the stand, and I'd snap my fingers, and he'd turn around and, kind of sheepishly walk away, leave the bait, do a circle, come back in the trail by the stand.
Yeah.
Do the same thing. Did a couple of laps, and he'd go lay down and, dig in the dirt, whatever, and play around. And then he left real quietly, like he just got nervous and left. And then I guess probably about 1:15, 1:30 or so, that big old black bear came in. And he came in as quiet as could be. Now, on the camera, when that grizzly bear was in there, before and after he was in there, every time, like within 2 minutes, this black bear was in the bait before him and after him. And so I kind of figured they'd been kind of maybe having it out a little bit. And when this black bear came in, he came down the trail, half crouched, with his head kind of peeking around the corner and ears just laid flat back. Like he was just waiting. Who's here and who am I going to fight tonight? He was just dead quiet. Like I saw him. I never would have heard him. And then he walked right by the stand, looked around. He's kind of doing this like, all right, okay. Coast is clear. Goes in and lays down at the bait. Well, he was laying down, kind of quartering away, and I was having this conversation with my wife, like, all right, we don't need any more meat necessarily. Like, this is a trophy bear. I think I'll go ahead and shoot him. It was my turn to shoot. And now I talk a lot about like experimenting with stuff, and I always like to try different things here and there. And laying down, quartering away like that, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I could put it at an angle to break the offside shoulder, which is typically a little bit farther forward than I would usually shoot one. But because of how far he was quartered away, I thought, I'm still going to get both lungs. So I shot him through the ribs, and we were not very high off the ground at all at that spot. And so it wasn't a severe angle. And the arrow went through the middle of the ribs, angled forward towards that shoulder, hit a rib on the entrance, hit a rib on the exit, and then stuck halfway up the bone in between your elbow and your shoulder and jammed into that arm bone. And usually, I at least every black bear I ever shot, when you shoot them, bow or rifle, they just take off if they don't go down right away, right? Like they get hit, they might do a spin, and then they're gone, right? This one did what a grizzly bear would do if you shoot him. He reached around, bit, rolled, growled, snarled, and then stands up and postures up and is looking around. And then he starts walking over towards the stand. At this point, I've already knocked another arrow because that's just the rule of hunting. If you can shoot him again, you shoot him again. I knew he was a dead bear. And his leg was broken on the offside. I could see him kind of limping. Well, then he looked up at us in the stand. And again, we're not that high off the ground. And I'd had an issue with that bear of Tabitha's the week prior, trying to come up the stand. And he was a foot smaller than this bear. So the last thing I wanted is this bear to stand up and have his shoulders up in the stand. So he came over. I drew my bow back. I was going to shoot him through the top of his chest down in there. And then he laid his ears back and blew and was kind of hissing. Well, the second thing I've always wondered if I could do with a bow is if it would go through the skull. And so he was close enough and he was angry enough, and I was questioning what his choice was going to be and not wanting to shoot him with a gun. I shot him in the forehead.
There you
with
go.
my bow. And it interrupted his thought process.
Yeah.
He was dead before his nose hit the dirt, which was forthwith. And the broadhead went straight through the front of his forehead and went through the back of his skull, out the brainstem, and I found the broadhead halfway back in his vertebrae in his neck. It scrambled his brain and perfect. And it barely even curled the tip over on the broadhead.
Nice.
From going through the skull.
You gonna use it again next year?
Nope. That one's going to get epoxied into the skull for
there you go.
For the mount.
Nice.
And so,
nice.
Yeah. Short blood trail.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You know, and it's not so much that I really wanted to shoot one in the head. It was partly that, and that his attitude was bad enough. And being as close to him as I was, and knowing what he had been acting like before, and seeing that bear, and I thought, you know, and I was out of angle, pointed down. If he came any closer, I wasn't going to be able to shoot him anywhere again, and I wanted to get another arrow in him.
Sure.
And so he moved his head, and I moved my pin, and we met halfway. So
nice.
It works.
You know, I know typically, you know, I mean, we've discouraged headshots in the past and stuff like that. But to be fair, that is in the field broadside situations, right? Or like a moose that's moving or its head around and stuff. It's a very low percentage shot at anything long range, anything.
Right.
You know, you have a very good chance of missing that off button.
Yep.
At 15 feet, 20 feet at a bait site.
Pretty close.
And
he was halfway between the bait and me.
You're looking dead between his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a perfectly ethical shot.
And here's the other thing too, right? I knew that bear was already dead. I just didn't know how much longer he was going to live and what he was going to do with the rest of that time.
And a lot of people have been goofed up by dead bears.
Exactly. And I've dealt with enough attitude-y bears at that bait already this year. I wasn't going to take that chance. And I knew how big he was. I said that there is no way that I'm playing this chance. I knew that bear was dead. That first arrow was perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything better. It went in that far arm bone and split that bone lengthwise from his shoulder to his elbow. Like that first arrow and both lungs. He was dead. He just didn't know it yet. And I showed my father-in-law that video. I showed Randy, his hunting partner, that video. And both of them said, I've never shot a black bear that came back to fight like that and that had an attitude. They always run.
Those guys have killed some bears.
Yeah. That's a combined 70 plus bears with a bow between those two guys. And so they said, you know, the more I think about it, the more I think I would have done the exact same thing.
Yep.
I would never take that shot as a first shot. But knowing that he was already dead, and then just to stop him from doing anything stupid,
all right,
that was fine. So
that reminds me of that honey bun bear.
Yeah.
That's the same. Where you just are like, whoa, you're not leaving?
Yeah.
Or that one left and came back.
Right.
The honey bun bear.
Yeah.
He took off, and we're waiting for a death bone. And next thing you know, he walks back in and gets his honey bun. What the heck? Yeah. Troy knocks another arrow, and I'm like, no, we're not playing that game. Here's my rifle. Give me your bow. This is done. We sprayed that bear twice, 15 minutes before that. We had dumped a can of bear spray in that bear's face because we didn't want to kill him, and he was getting aggressive. And then Troy put an arrow through him, and he came back for more. Well, he just came back 8 with a.
They take some punishment
with a arrow all the way.
It's crazy. You know, I watched a video. I shot my first bear this year with 4570, right? And shortly before that, was it right after that? I watched a buddy. We've had him on here, Brad. His son shot a bear with a rifle, 4570. He shot him down through right next to the shoulder, down through the back. And, you know, didn't spine him or anything. I took the heart out. But the bear just died right there.
Yeah.
And the first bear I shot, I hit with 4570, and it just spins and jumps up and just take 20 yards, and rolled over and died. And I was like, man, in the kind of I'm shooting a hammer, there's so much destruction when it hits. I was expecting just that drop.
Lights out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the biggest bear that I've ever killed. I shot with a 30-30.
Yes, sir.
Died on top of the bait pile.
Yep.
I think a lot of it has to be temperament when they come in, how they're feeling when they get shot, right? If that adrenaline's already up, because that first bear I shot this year was so wound up.
Yeah.
The smallest little thing got him going. That big bear was laying there, not a care in the world.
Well, and it's like they say, each bear is an individual. They all have their own personalities. I think that's probably how they live and also how they die. So
I think his attitude played a huge part in that decision.
I agree. Yeah.
Because
that's legit.
he came in looking for something to run off, and then he acted like after he got hit the first time that, all right, let's get it on. It was like you rang the bell in the ring for a boxing match.
Yeah.
That just lit him up. And then when he saw us, he locked eyes with me, laid his ears back, and then started hissing. No, we're not playing this game. But I mean, he was full of bite marks. I thought at one point that I had found my first broadhead poking out, but it was a bite mark that was like a 1/2 inch round, like clean down to the meat that was healed around it. So he was all kinds of beat up, and it helps that he was the biggest bear I ever shot personally, but it didn't beat Mariah's bear.
And what did he square out at?
Squared at 7. And the skull was just a hair under 19.
You know what this guy sent me on the inReach?
It's close.
Yeah, I got one in the bait tonight. It was 6+.
I told Tabitha.
You didn't go with the all 6 foot all day or whatever it was?
I told Tabitha, I said, you watch, I'm going to get Mariah back.
And I was sitting there like, does that mean?
Yes.
What?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on a successful end of your season, sir.
It was fun.
And so, Mo, the guy with the award for the biggest bear in the TNH crew this year.
Ever.
How did your end of season weekend go?
I mean, it was. I was excited to get in there and see I still had another nice shooter on the bait. No 7-footer, but every 6 foot all day. Right?
6 foot all day.
But and so I sat the first night. Like he was coming in like in between 1 and 2, no later than 3. And so I was like, perfect. I sat the first night from like 9 till 3:30. Left, went home, went to bed, came back. He hadn't been back. Sat again. Then I was like, did the same thing. I sat till almost 4, and that would have been Sunday morning. And had a wolf come in, walk around. That bear never came back. I don't know if he smelled me. I don't know what. But I worked really hard on my scent. I worked a little bit on my scent the first night. I worked really hard the second night. I know my scent was good on the second night because I had a wolf come in. Came, pretty close behind my stand and walked around and everything. Didn't like walk into the open, but and couldn't have shot him anyway, right? But
yeah,
I wanted to, but
yeah,
it would have been cool.
You sure it wasn't a husky?
I'm sure it wasn't.
It would have been legal if it was a husky.
Yeah, right.
No, I would like to shoot a wolf with my bow one day.
That would be cool.
I actually saw one on my way to the bait, and it may have been the same one. I'm not sure. The one on the way, actually, I think was bigger.
Really? You think there was a couple of them?
I think there was. It could have been the same, but the one on my way in stopped in the trail in front of me and looked at me for a few moments before running off.
Our first grizzly bait,
yeah.
I went in there, took one of my brothers in there one year. Remember I told you that? The old far one where Samson went to on the far side? I saw a wolf on that trail in the middle of the afternoon. Yeah.
I've seen wolves where you're at. A lot.
Yeah.
Just go there in the winter and just set your bear bait up.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Go in season.
So learn to go in there and call.
Yes, sir.
No, you don't change what works. Just put some old Roy down.
Clearly they like it.
Cannot bait wolves with animal food.
You can't?
Nope. At least not in the hunting regs. I haven't looked at trapping, but
I'm sure you can do it in trapping.
You might be able to in trapping, but in the hunting regs, you can't use animal food, you can't use human food, you can't use artificial scent lures. So I'm not exactly sure what you're supposed to.
Oh well, you're good. That trapping regs rifle. I'd bet money on it. Save some more Roy.
There's no artificial scent in my bait.
Exactly.
Little nasty boar, little old Roy.
Yeah, nasty boar's a natural scent. Might not be naturally produced, but it's a natural scent.
I remember one time I worked on his job, and this gal, she comes and gets me. I'm flooring in her house. Comes and gets me. She's got a little doggy door. She had one of those little lap dogs. She's like, I can't tell what this is. And I'm like, well, what's the deal? She goes, I think the neighbor's dog or something. The new neighbor's dog's coming in the doggy door eating my dog's dog food. And I walk down there, there's a red fox in her garage eating her dog food. Nice. That's a red fox.
What's the reg say about trapping on concrete?
Right.
You got a rifle around here, ma'am?
Right. Or a baseball club.
I
must be one of those exotic breeds.
last year end of season cleaning up, I wasn't bummed. I was like, I worked really hard, nothing. I was done. I was like, this is enough. I got stuff to do. This year, having been successful, I was bummed. I was like, I wanted to kill one more bear.
My wife.
Well, that's how I feel this year. I'm like, closing everything down, and we got a bear, but we didn't get one on the bait. And I was like, it kind of sucked, but at the same time, I was like, I did my recon. I'm happy. I'm happy with this season.
Between you and I, Mo, we're getting email. These two guys.
Oh,
they were sad, huh?
My wife and I sat another 2.5 hours with mine laying there with an arrow sticking out of his forehead. And we had one more coming around that he didn't show. But
you see Bob laying there with an arrow in his forehead.
Well, he didn't come into view, but you have that
People
smell.
are sick.
Right.
You have that smell of that big dominant boar in there.
And I kind of wonder if that's the reason I only had that one bear back on my bait.
Could have been.
Because, I gutted him right next to the bait pile.
Yeah,
and
possibly.
Bears will usually come eat guts of another bear. So I was like, I want to see what comes in touch.
That grizzly bear and 7 other black bears hadn't touched the carcass of Tabitha's bear in 6 days.
What?
They had rolled it over,
Really?
not a bite out of it.
Really?
Not a bit.
See, I killed that first bear. There was a 3 or 12-inch piece of intestine left.
Yeah. All the dog food was gone, and they were digging the dirt up and just moving the things around
That's
at the
crazy.
bait.
I've never
but
heard
they
of-
hadn't even touched the bear
I haven't
That
carcass.
seen
cinnamon that I shot was chowing on the carcass of that other one. Big time. Getting into it.
At the other bait, they were chewing on the carcass that I had shot that one off of the other one.
You and I?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
They were chewing on
remember,
that
you
one.
were all bummed. You're like, I want that cinnamon. And you're like, and it hasn't been back. I'm like, we just stank this up. That thing's here.
Yeah.
And then it comes walking up 10 minutes later.
Mm-hmm. Which is lovely.
I was like, I bet you he's down there chowing on that, chowing on that carcass.
Save the gallbladder for me, Clark.
All right. Well, I'm glad we all had a successful season. Hopefully, all you guys listening did as well. If you're in Alaska or anywhere you're allowed to bait in the spring, if you did, send us some pictures. We love seeing pictures of success stories and tell us your tales. I like hearing that. Before we gear up for first break, though, Mike, you have any bear baiting stories from the past? Or I know you said you hadn't baited in a while before we started recording, but
yeah, all your stories are very similar to mine, and it's, you're absolutely right about the bear. It's 9 out of 10 bears will run when they see you, they get out, but there's always that one that has an attitude that you have to worry about. And one time I walked into my bait. The one that really sticks out for me is I went by myself, and we were going to go to Valdez the next day on a fishing trip. And I went out, and it was just a low ceiling, raining. You couldn't make noise if you wanted to. Really foggy. Didn't get in there till about 11 o'clock in the evening, and it was already getting dark. Really heavy brush cover and trees. And as I'm walking in, I was probably about maybe 30 yards from my barrel, and what I thought was the end of a black bear with his head in my barrel. I had a 5-gallon bucket full of dog food, my bow in the other hand, my 500 on my chest. As I'm walking in, I'm like, what's in front of my bait? And every time I kind of move my head, to try to look through the brush to see what it was moving too. So I sat my bucket down, grabbed my bow, took a couple steps forward, and it stood up, and it was a grizzly. And he was a big grizzly, and he looked right at me, and I'm like, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna.
I'm in trouble.
My wife is gonna be so pissed. It's the only thing that she's like, I can't believe you go out there by yourself, and it's kind of a rule of thumb. I usually try not to do that, but I was like, this is gonna leave a mark. And literally that bear, it stood, and that's what I was looking at was his head. He was laying in front of my barrel. So when I was trying to angle at him, he was looking at me, trying to figure out what I was too. And he came right at me. I had a corral, how we build corrals in front of the barrel to try to guide the bears in. Well, he was running at me. I dropped my bow. I didn't even have it was so fast. I was grabbing my 500. I probably had it halfway out of my holster. when he took a hard right and jumped over the corral, probably at, I don't know, 10, 12, you know, and he took off running into the trees.
Yikes.
And I was just yelling at him like, "You better run!" You know,
right.
That's what I thought.
as I'm shaking,
you
know, literally shaking, like I couldn't even feel my body at that moment because I thought this was really going to happen. You know, all the stories that we hear, this one's going to come true. You know, and it happened so fast. You know, a lot of people, you know, I have 500. I carry a 500, and I when I'm moose hunting and stuff, I carry a 10 mil, like a Glock 20, but I'm not in like hunting bears. When I'm hunting bears, I'm going to be lucky to get one shot. You know, and it's going to be a big one. It's very rarely are you going to be able to get multiple rounds off at that distance. If you're hunting with a rifle, that's always going to be your first option, right? But when you're bow hunting, you know, you might have, you're going to get in a gunfight and it's going to be close. And so that's why I opted for the 500. And it happened so fast. I don't even know if I would have got one shot off. You know,
I mean,
that's how
distance,
close it was. And so, that's my bear story that'll stick with me for a really long time.
Well, and it's important for people to remember too, because, you know, a lot of people get into this passion of ours, you know, and we all love hunting bears and baiting bears. And, you know, there's always new people trying to get into it. We did an event this spring on bear baiting education and a how-to. And I mean, we had a ton of people show up and way more than I anticipated when we first thought about doing something like that. And, but it's easy because especially if you start off in some of these close to town pressured areas, you're not going to run into the kind of craziness, you know, the 7 bears being on your bait when you walk in, or the sow grizzly with 3 cubs, or, you know, things of that nature. It can get you can get real used to walking into a very quiet, tranquil setting, and you just get up in your stand and, you know, that's the way it is. And a lot of people, I'd say they get a false sense of security in that.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. And and honestly, I'll even say there's a group of individuals that will get that sense of security even on the more hopping baits. You know, just if they've been doing it for a long enough time, and I've never been charged walking in. You know, I've been doing this for 10 years. I just carry my pistol when I go in, and it's like it's the one time. That's all it takes is the one time.
We were talking about that last week and saying, you know, I could just do without bringing a rifle in because I'm bow hunting now.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I'm still bringing in a rifle because you never know. And then my wife and I got in there and there was this grizzly bear. And the first thing I thought was, man, am I glad I have my rifle with me.
Yeah. Yeah. The scariest part of walking, you know, bear baiting is walking out of your bait when it's really quiet. You haven't heard a thing. Nothing's come in
at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And you know, they're there, but that's always the sketchy part. But when I first moved here and started, you know, talking about meeting guys that have bear baited and stuff, you know, I was like always kind of the tail end guy walking in, and I looked like I was clearing a house. You know, I mean, I had a shotgun. I'm every 20 steps, I'm turning around. My head's on a swivel.
Yep.
I'm like, you know, I've seen movies, I've seen stories, I've heard the stories. My spidey senses are tingling like all the time until I get in there. And so I was always carrying a shotgun, but that just became heavy, and that's when I went with the 500. But a lot of times when I start getting close to that bait, it's in my hand. It's not in my holster anymore. It's just in my hand as I walk in.
Yeah, we usually tie off. So, like, you know, first part of season, we'll flag out the trail to the bait. 2 weeks in, maybe, you know, we'll pull the flagging tape just because we know where we're going now.
Yeah.
But I'll always flag one tree. And I'll usually put like 3 wraps around it just to be very obvious. And that's what we call the start of the red zone.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that is. If you're walking in with dog food on your back on a pack board, put that down.
Yep.
Get your gun ready. Walk in sneaky, and be ready for.
That's one thing I stopped doing too. Is like I used to just have my hands full, and I've had enough encounters now. And I remember when I started doing this, like growing up around bears and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm like, didn't really have the concern of bears having bad behavior.
Right.
Aggressive behavior. And then I'd ask guys, and a lot of guys would be like, oh, you're fine. Yeah. And then like one of my buddies, he's like, let me tell you something. He's like, you're playing with dynamite. and he's like pretty avid bear baiter, and he's like, you will get charged. And I'm like, geez, like, and it like 2 seasons went by. I'm like, I don't know. And then finally I got charged.
Yep.
And then I got charged again. And then like, that's the same, like, you know, Dalton, you know, stalk looking for wounded brown bears. They do weird, creepy, spooky stuff, right?
They turn around and look and face your direction and wait for you to come in.
Yeah. And like black bears, we've had to stalk in on some wounded black bears before, and they're usually kind of timid and piled up. You know, they're not aggressive, but I've had buddies warn me of that too. They're like, dude, you know, Carl told me that, you know, don't think that they're black bears and they won't charge you. And then here I am ready to step on that one's head the other night. Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, and he's like just huffing and like he's damaged, like, you know, and I think if I would have got any closer to that bear and I wouldn't have been ready for it, it would have been on. I mean, because that's not a bluff charge situation. That's a fight or flight situation.
Yeah.
And
you guys are,
you know,
you guys are going to like this one. A friend of mine shot a black bear a couple of weeks ago, and the shot wasn't ideal. Shot it with a rifle, went and tracked it. He went a couple 100 yards, couldn't find it, went to a clearing on a hillside, couldn't find it, found a lot of blood next to like a little hole in the ground. Then there's a second hole in the ground, like 10 feet over. He looks in the other hole, has some sunlight on it, and he sees black fur with blood on it.
Yep.
The bear had climbed into a hole in the ground, like a black bear den, and was laying in there while him and 2 or 3 other people were standing right over the entrance of the hole, knelt down in front of it, like grabbing the leaves, like, yeah, man, that blood is fresh, looking for where he ran off to. And they were right on top of this thing. And so he said, so we all jumped back, and then he stuck a gun barrel down in the hole, shot him once, and then hit him with a 10 millimeter a couple of times. He blew out of the other end, where there was the other guy with a 375 who shot him right in the face as he came out of the hole and ended it all. Man. I told him, I said, you don't know how lucky you are. Standing.
That's how that guy lost his face a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right in front of the den.
Yep.
Yeah. Peeled his face right off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, they're more afraid of the grizzly bears, but I'm not. I mean, if a black bear charges you, his intent is to eat you.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you may die of your wounds from a grizzly.
Yes.
But
the intent is very different on a black
completely different.
Yeah.
And
I agree with
that
you.
5-foot black bear, if he's coming after you, he's gonna eat you. I mean, what was like 2019? I think it was, where there was a bunch of fatalities in the state of Alaska, and a couple of them were grizzly, but the majority of them were black bears.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about charging, man, it's
Well, and that bear was like that one that we finished off. He was probably like maybe 6 foot.
Yeah.
And I pumped him full lead before he succumbed.
Yeah.
I think I shot him 5 times, and they were hard hits. And I mean, from me to you, James.
Yeah.
I mean, just.
What was the reaction from him with your 10 mil? I'm really curious about that.
So when I caught him, he was crawling out of that hole towards me.
Right.
I hit him just over the head in the spine, and then he started to stand up, and I threw the rifle. And as soon as I just traced my chest back into my 10, pulled it, and I had turned my body to, and I yanked it out, hammered him. He went down, went to get up again, hammered him again. He went to get up, and I hammered him again, and he fell down and died.
Which bullets do you have in your 10 mil?
I am running the
Is it the extreme penetrators?
No,
Buffalo
they
War?
are they got that red coating nickel
the cherry
case.
coat.
Oh yeah.
Hard cast.
Those are hard casts. Yeah.
Mhm.
What are those?
Underwood.
Yeah, it's
Underwood.
underwood.
Yeah,
Underwood
underwood.
cherry coat.
Yep. And you know what's interesting about that? Some of those didn't go all the way through at that distance.
Yeah.
Were they deformed at all or no?
I never found any.
Okay.
I never really looked.
Mm.
We had a lot of work on.
But
our
that kept
plate.
setting him down though.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and the thing is you could see rip.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh,
mean,
that's
you could
good.
see
I
the
bet.
effect, and I mean, it was
That's
like
good.
putting the like standing on the brake pedal. I mean, it
Good.
was
Good.
Those are
But-
north of 200 grains, aren't they? Aren't they like two?
Depends on which
the
dog you
ones
get.
I got are 220.
220.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And and I was
I've been
sharp.
curious
I was
about
landing
shooting
them.
those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was landing them. I like, you know, you always kind of like, I always do this stuff like where I try to hype myself up. Like, yeah, if I get in this situation, and then I have that reality check, I'm like, I don't know I'm going to do real well because that's pretty terrifying. But I was like on point. And that rifle, I flung that rifle like no restraints. As soon as I got that first round off, I just dumped that rifle and went right. I already had that handgun in my hand and I was just motoring them. I'm like, come on, dude.
It's always quicker to switch to your secondary than reload. So
yeah. And I see like a lot of guys are like, I'm going to cycle my bolt. Like, no. Like I'm going to get you with everything I have. And then we're going to tango.
Exactly.
You carry a big old belt knife now, don't you?
You know, I have a like a 80s. I have to look it up. I got to get it in my hands and look it up again. I was looking it up, talking to a buddy at work about it today, but it's a 1980s, I believe, buck knife, but it's a Rambo, right? It's got like it's about a 12-inch blade on it.
Yeah.
It's a serious knife. This is not like
a K-bar or something, like an old K-bar.
No, it's
big buoy.
It's almost a Bowie knife style knife, and I mean it's a serious knife. It's nothing cheap. I looked it up, and the one that popped up was like $875, and wow, I was like, if this is, I gotta go look the one I have up because it looked exactly like mine. But I've thought about strapping that thing to my side in case I ever.
Hey, you know what? If you end up in that situation, the bigger the blade,
the
better.
I've also thought like I should maybe do the spear thing, and I got a 12-inch blade.
Just like jump out of the stand and
that's the next step, right?
Jump on the back, start working.
Oh my goodness!
No, hide in the barrel and just in the throat when he sticks his head in there.
I'm giving Tim Wells more ideas. All right, well, we better get to the main topics. Hey, he shot a bear in the head too. So
did he?
You guys have that in common, yeah. So
I'm gonna post a picture of his bear and your bear. Post you guys side by side.
Yeah,
tag you both.
Just the two of us.
I didn't know that he'd ever done that.
Yeah,
and I'm never gonna post my video because I'm not trying to advocate for people to do that.
All right. Well, again, hopefully everybody had a great season. If you did, send us pictures. We'd love to hear about it. And on that note, let's take our first break.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to stealthyhunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, Mike. So we went over a little bit about your organization, the Alaska Outdoors Mentorship Program.
Yep.
Now, before we get too carried away here, you guys have an Instagram presence, correct?
Yes, and Facebook.
And Facebook. All right. And that's just if somebody searches at Alaska Outdoors Mentorship Program.
Yep, they'll find
the
us.
full thing. Yep, no spaces. Cool. So if you like what you're hearing today, and you live in the Fairbanks area, and you want to get involved or attend, go follow that. That's, I'm assuming, where you'll put all your updates for future events and stuff like that and whatnot.
Yeah, and you can also reach me at 907-687-0290 or 907-405-0838.
Perfect.
Either one of those numbers. Call me anytime.
Right on. Well, let's get a little bit of backstory on you. Just we'll kind of start at the beginning, where you're from, kind of your background in hunting before you came up here, and then ultimately how you landed in the best state in the union.
Okay. So as long as you guys promise to have beers with me after I tell you this. So
absolutely.
I was this is the part that I have a hard time getting over. So I was born and raised in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought I should have been born there. My dad,
we got one of those.
My parents, my dad was a steel worker. After World War II, he was a Bronze Star recipient in World War II.
Oh.
My parents had me later in life when they were 40. I had 3 older siblings. I came along 12 years later.
So you had to be tough.
It was like having 4 sets of parents, kind of,
right.
being the youngest. So So anyway, my dad loved hunting, and fishing. He loved to hunt mule deer and elk in Colorado. He'd go for 2 weeks every year. Had really good friends there, and unfortunately, he passed away when I was 22 years old. He was 61 or 62, and that was tough because being the youngest, he was kind of out of his hunting prime by that time, and I didn't get to go on a lot of cool adventures with him.
Sure, yeah.
And then, and I always dreamed of living in the Rocky Mountains when I retired. I grew up with, a house full of Field and Stream magazines and Sports Afield, and we didn't have all the cool stuff we have now, right? With YouTube and the Hunting Outdoor Channel, and we didn't have all that. So you kind of lived through magazines, and I always dreamed of living in the Rocky Mountains when I retired. And then, my dad died at 61, and then 2 years later, my oldest brother passed away at 41.
Oh man!
And both were unexpected, and that loss really changed my trajectory in life, because it was like, I may not live long enough to retire, and even if I do, who says I'm going to be old enough, good enough shape to go do the things that I want to do?
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I mean, it was that, and it took a few years to make that happen. My wife and I are best friends, and we have 5 children, 18 grandchildren.
Wow.
And I'm really proud to say all my kids have done a really good job at raising their kids in the outdoor. They all love the outdoors. And,
awesome. Passing it on.
Yeah. And my grandkids love the outdoor. I mean, we all do. So 2 of my boys served in the military.
Okay.
One did 2 tours in Iraq, another did a tour in Afghanistan. And then I also had a son that was in law enforcement. He was a police officer and SWAT operator.
Yeah.
And then, we're really proud of them,
Yeah.
And then, they're all out of the Army now. My son's out of the police department. 4 of us work. Well, what I do now is I'm the senior development manager for all the military housing at Fort Wainwright and Fort Greely, Alaska. My wife is actually the director of property management and works 30 feet down the hall from me. And
so you guys better like each other then.
Yeah. And then my youngest son, Steven, he's actually the service manager for all the military housing as well.
Oh.
And then my son, Matt, that was the police officer and SWAT operator. He does what I do at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And
nice.
so there's 4 of us that feel very blessed and privileged to give back to our military families that sacrifice so much for us, so it's a rare and unique opportunity to be a military family, giving back to military families. It's just really cool. It's a blessing.
Absolutely.
So, so that being said, we when we moved to Colorado, didn't know anybody, but man, I just got after it, and next thing you know, you're hunting mule deer and elk, antelope, black bear, turkey, waterfowl, all out your front door for the most part.
Yeah, they got a lot of different things to chase there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when the regulations were reasonable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, where you could get an over-the-counter, mule deer tag and elk tag. And they weren't catering to non-residents and driving up the prices of our tags and limiting our hunting areas too. I mean, it's changed dramatically since then in that state. And so, grew up, all my kids, we were all hunting out there and just had a great time. And then I was in the home building industry at that time as well. I've been doing that for 40 years.
Okay.
And then when the housing crash happened in 2007, I found myself out of a job for the first time in my life. And I had a little dilemma because a friend of mine owned a general outfitting business and a show on the Outdoor Channel called Higher Ground Outdoors with Weston and Jody Clark.
Okay.
And I had interviewed with the company that I'm with now, and it was taking some time to get the offer letter and stuff. And Weston had offered me a job to be the general manager of the outfitting business and the vice president of sales for the television show. And for like half the money and no benefits that I normally made, And I had planned a whitetail hunt down in Texas, and we were sitting around the hunting campfire and having a couple beers and talking about my dilemma. I have got 2 job offers. I've got this one and I've got this one. And they called me Iron Mike. And they're like, Iron Mike, that's a no-brainer. Take the job. That pays you half as much as you usually make with no benefits. That's what you need to do. And I said, I'm going to do it, So I took that job, and
naturally,
it made sense at the time. And I called my wife from Texas around the hunting camp, and I told her my decision, and she was in support. And then about 2 hours later, she called me and said my offer letter for the other job had arrived in the mail. So, but I'd already made the commitment, and I stuck with it. And I did that for about 5 or 6 months. It was great. I mean, you got to go to the Archery Trade Association show in Indianapolis, and you're going to the SHOT Show, and you look over here and there's Ted Nugent, and over here I'm getting in an elevator with Michael Waddell, and there's Jim Shockey, and you're starstruck. You're like, wow, these are all the guys I love watching, and you're getting to hang out with them, Ralph and Vicky, and just really cool people, cool industry. But I kind of got it out of my system because I saw my family kind of suffering because of my decision. And I was like, I need to get back to making some money. And so went back, got the job that I originally was offered. I built the first housing at Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado Springs.
Oh, okay.
There was no housing there before I got there. And so great project. And then about 2 years into that, the job offer came up here at Fort Wainwright for construction manager. And so I took that. And, my only regret in life, I think, is going to Colorado first. I should have just came straight to Alaska. It taught me a lot. I made some really lifelong friends there. It was good for the time, but man, Alaska is home. I don't feel like I've ever lived anywhere else. And I've got 3 of my 5 children are up here now, and I've got 11 of my 18 grandchildren. So got my 1 son and his wife and 4 grandchildren right here in North Pole. I've got a daughter in Wasilla with 4 more kids, and a son in Anchorage with 3 of them. So so we're really blessed, and Alaska's just been so good to us.
Yeah.
And so when I got here, of course, I'm wanting to go head first into everything. And I quickly realized I knew nothing, and
it's a whole new arena.
It is.
Yeah.
I'd never hunted moose before. I'd never hunted caribou. I'd never hunted grizzlies. I never hunted in grizzly country.
Well, they're all endangered down there if they exist at all.
Yeah. I never hunted on tundra.
Tussocks.
Yeah. I'd never hunted tussocks. I've hunted at 10,000 foot peaks all day long.
Sure.
But a lot different than here. And, I always respect where I'm at, and I want to make sure I'm doing it right. I want to make sure I'm following the laws. I want to make sure I'm respectful to people and their property. I just want to fit in and do it right. So, I was very blessed to meet some really good people that took me under their wing when I first got here and really taught me the way. Because the first couple of years, you struggle. You're like, where do I go?
Yeah.
It's a big country. People don't understand how big this country is.
Oh, sure.
And you could drive 3 days through the state and still be in it.
Exactly.
It's a big place.
Yeah.
And people in the lower 48 think animals are running around just everywhere.
Yeah, like it's Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Yeah. How hard could it be to get a moose?
Yeah.
Just go to the woods where they live.
It took me quite a few years. So anyway, I really am thankful and, like I said, blessed. Guys like Butch Whiting that owns Cryptech, that's where they started their business here. We met. He was a general contractor actually at the time. That's where we became friends. And,
oh, really?
And a lot of us, most of us, are not from here. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and we don't have family here. And so your family's a million miles away, but your friends here become your family.
Yeah.
The relationships that you get here are amazing. And so when people reach out and help you out and invite you into their home and into their family for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, and next thing you know, you're celebrating birthdays and baptisms and you name it.
Yeah.
You're just all in. And it's just, I don't think anywhere else is like this.
No.
And I think Fairbanks is just a unique community in the interior of Alaska. We don't live here because it's easy.
Exactly.
We live here because it's freaking hard.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's in the winter, it's just, hey, I made it to work alive.
Exactly.
I mean, it's never Groundhog Day. It's never Groundhog Day, and I still split my firewood by hand. I don't use a splitter. I mean, those are just,
you got to embrace the suck.
You do.
Yeah.
It's exactly how you said it perfect. So, so that's kind of how we started up here, and working on Fort Wainwright, we like I said, the military's near and dear to our heart.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, this could be the duty station of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys, being out in the field as much as I have for the last 15 years, we're also a cabin owner. We actually built a cabin up in the White Mountains. We were on season 11 of Building Alaska. And so they talk about embrace the suck. They filmed all that, and we didn't have to fake any of it. But being and that taught me a lot of how to be prepared when you're.
You didn't go through the deepest mud hole on purpose or anything.
No, I had to go through it on purpose. That was the only way to get to my cabin. But you quickly realize how small you are in this state when you're out in the middle of nowhere and things are breaking down, and you thought you had everything, but you didn't. And I think for us Alaskans, every time we go out, just listening to your stories, we learn something new every time we go out. What can break, what the weather patterns are like, what's going on with our weapons, or what kind of technology are we taking to the field? You're out 200 miles away from town. Do you have an inReach? Do you have a sat phone?
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot that can happen. So I don't think you can overly prepare, and like I said, having a cabin out there now, we get to see a lot of things. I've had people shoot right on top of my cabin, with it. That's just not okay.
Right.
And I had some pretty serious words with some of the guys that first did that. And now I really make it a point to try to, if I see somebody close to the cabin, I go out and introduce myself, tell them, hey, my wife's looking out the kitchen window. We're pretty nervous.
Oh yeah.
You're kind of pointing, like, if animals run between my cabin and you're going to be shooting towards my cabin. Have you thought of that?
Yeah.
Know
your target and what's beyond.
Yeah. And how foggy it gets up there, during the 40 mile and stuff like that. But, I tell them, look, I tell them my name, and I say, look, we're here if you need help. I've got the tools. I've got food. Whatever you might need, you break down, I'll help you out. Just don't hunt on top of my cabin. That's, and I remember being that guy. I mean, but for me, it was always driving down a trail. You see a cabin and you're going, man, look at that cool cabin.
Right.
I wish I had one of those.
Yeah.
That guy's probably hunting right here. How cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept going until I didn't see the cabin anymore.
Right.
It's really that simple. But now I'm that guy, that dream became a reality. And so, like I said, we're there to help people, but it's not ethical to shoot on top of people's houses. And so.
Yeah. And to kind of back up and verify, like what you were saying, I mean, with this town being what it is, you've got, and I can verify because that's how I got here, was in the military. And, there's people that took me under their wing, and same exact concept, show up for Thanksgiving at our house, or, I've done 24-hour guard duty on Thanksgiving too. And I had people just bring me a plate of food while I'm sitting there in the shack. But it can be a very lonely place, and it can be a very hard place to get into a community like that, because not everybody's blessed to have someone take them under their wing like that. And the situations you can get into, I think you'd mentioned it at the very beginning of the show, but you've got two guys, one from Nebraska and one from Kentucky, and then they're not teaming up with any of the Alaskans off base, because for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then you get, hey, you want to go hunt a caribou?
Yeah.
And it's the blind leading the blind.
Exactly.
And they end up out there by your cabin.
Yeah. Well, they go, or even worse, they rent a snow machine that they've never ridden before from MWR or whatever. And they go out and they see 200 head of caribou in the bottom of a valley. And they don't realize when they kill that caribou that when they load it up, they can't get out of that valley.
Right. There's 8 feet of powder down there.
And then you start losing fingers and toes to frostbite and everything else. So, it's an awesome, awe-inspiring place that we live in. People always ask me, how do you live in Alaska? And I'm like, man, all I know is I live somewhere where people save a lifetime to come visit one time,
Exactly.
and we get to enjoy it every day. And
we pay our rent in the winters.
Oh, we do.
Yeah,
we do. But winters are awesome. I mean, winters are awesome too. The opportunities we were talking about predator hunting earlier, or the winter hunt or trapping. I mean, my recommendation for people that are afraid of winter is you haven't experienced it enough yet. Get out in it, get the snow machine, learn how to predator hunt, learn how to trap. It'll change your world. Yeah. You'll love winter. Your winter will take on a whole new light.
Yeah. The fun don't end when the snow flies.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just begins.
Yeah.
Especially in your world.
Yeah.
Everyone's all sad and I'm like, yeah.
and then bear baiting. And then you spend, 40 hours at work and then 40 hours in the bear bait. Right?
More than that.
Yeah. So it's, it's so fun.
And then you think you're going to get a break in July, but then the salmon are running. And so you're making 6-hour drives and spending all night holding, a piece of metal in a moving body of water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Half asleep.
Yeah.
Right.
Sponsored by Red Bull.
Yeah. So, these things, just, it was a concept that I've been thinking about a long time, for a number of years. And, I'm friends with Sue Aikens from Life Below Zero. She has the camp up in Kavik, and she had called me last year. It was like in August, like towards the end of August, maybe the first week of September. And she's like, hey, I've got a plane coming up. If you can fill it up with some guys, your guys are more than welcome to come up and hunt, and she's not a guide or an outfitter. She just has a camp there and we can hunt out of it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I called some friends, Gary Junk that owns Arctic Gun Works here in town, longtime Alaskan trapper, excellent gunsmith. He was also the airfield commander at Fort Wainwright for a while, Vietnam veteran, just solid guy, really cool. And another friend of mine is a veteran, Aaron Degnan, that owns Mr. D's Pest Control. You probably see his trucks driving around town.
Yeah, I've waved at him twice since the last event.
Okay. So big, passionate hunter, great guy. And Daniel Nelson, who works for the public affairs office on post, is another good friend. And so I called them up and said, hey, you guys want to go up to Sue's? And they're all like, yeah, let's go. And Daniel was a little unsure. He was like, man, I've got my vacation plan for a bear hunt in Kodiak, but do you have any soldiers that are going on this hunt? And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, if I could turn this into a story, I might be able to go on this hunt. And I said, well, let's do it. So I knew a couple soldiers and we called them up and it just turned out awesome. So we had a pre-hunt meeting. If you get on Facebook or the Instagram, you'll see a video that Daniel made. It's only 11 minutes long.
Well, actually, you sent me the link to that video on YouTube. We'll put it in the show notes for this.
Oh, okay.
This episode,
awesome.
So
thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and us partnering. I think this is I'm really excited what the future holds here for all of us. So, so anyway, we had a pre-hunt meeting, knowing that these soldiers had never hunted in Alaska. One had some experience. The other one had zero here. The one was seasoned hunter. Well, they're both pretty seasoned, but one had only hunted caribou here. So we had a pre-hunt meeting, kind of wanted to understand what their level of experience was, what kind of gear they had, explain to them what kind of environment we were going to be hunting in. And we jumped in the plane and flew to Kavik, man. And I've told a lot of people this story, just flying over the Brooks Range and seeing that mountain range from that perspective.
Absolutely.
Nobody cared about killing animals. It was just like, this is worth the price of admission right now, just what we're seeing. And so we landed, they got to meet Sue. We had a nice dinner. Next day we were hunting and, one of the soldiers killed his first grizzly bear on day one.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. We didn't see any caribou that day. But it took a few days and we got on a nice herd of caribou, probably a couple hundred of them. And we put a stock, about a 1 mile stock on them. And those guys were like doing PT. They were like running towards a caribou. I'm like, slow down, man. We're going across Tussock.
Oh yeah, you'll break an ankle.
You'll break an ankle, break a knee. And I said, and they're a long way away. They don't look that far away, but they're a long way away, and they're not going anywhere. They're just grazing. They're untouched. They're not unlike any other herd animal that you're not hunting out. You know, they're not elk. You know, they're not antelope. These are different. They're not quite as smart. And we got up there and I said, and plus, you know, if we're doing double time across the tussocks, your breathing's going to be off, and we're going to probably be taking 200 and 300 yard shots. We want to have our composure, take good quality shots. We don't want to be shaking and breathing. We just relax. And I remember, you know, when I saw my first herd of caribou, I don't know if you guys remember that, but I lost my mind.
Oh yeah.
You know, as a guy that never hunted them before, I thought this might be the only opportunity in my lifetime to kill a caribou. And, you know, I made plenty of mistakes and I learned from those mistakes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm trying to share those lessons learned with new hunters or people from, you know, new to Alaska and our type of hunting. And so, you know, the interesting thing was when we were getting up there, they're all like, okay, let's all split up. And I'm like, we're not splitting up. And they're like, why? You know, we got to split up. I go, no, here's what's going to happen. If we split up, we're going to see the biggest caribou drop with 6 bullet holes in them. You know, we need to stay together, select our caribou, and just take good ethical shots. Make sure the back, you know, a lot of people don't understand how thin skinned caribou are. And if you're shooting a 308 or a 300 Win Mag, 7 mil or 7 mag, I mean, any of those will go through 2 or 3 caribou.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Happens every year.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that we're trying to share with hunters, you know, so they don't catch themselves in a bad situation. You know, they're not doing it intentionally in most cases. It's an accident. So they're not thinking quite right. They've never been in that situation. So I learned through stories. You know, I just learned through a lot of stories. And so we're trying to share those stories.
Absolutely. Well, and on that note, you know, I'm excited to be working with you guys and helping you guys out as much as possible because it's the exact same goal as the Northern Hunter has, you know, and we've gotten some flack for, you know, trying to get more people in the woods and, it's already crowded enough and this, that, the other. But, you know, the fact of the matter is those people are going to be out there anyways. Yeah. You know, you might get the 1 and 2 that maybe weren't hunters before, but they got stationed in Alaska and they're like, heck, why not? Let's try it out. Let's see what this hunting thing's all about. And that could change their life. And then they could become lifelong hunters and pass that tradition on. But it's better to have educated people in the woods, even if there's more of them, than there is to have frustrations from uneducated people. And not to say that the hunters that come up from Nebraska aren't good hunters. Right. It's not that they don't know their home state and their home animals perfectly well. And they might be the most skilled person there is in Nebraska. Right. But up here, it's a different arena.
It's completely different.
You know, you told the story last year, Dalton, on around moose season of these 2 kids that came up to an old timer, you know, and it was just like during moose season, and this guy was sitting in 2 different locations, and twice these kids came up to him. Hey, you see anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that might be perfectly acceptable in some areas, in some regions where you're kind of competition hunting or you're all spaced out on the power line, you know, and I've hunted that way too. Yeah. But it's not that way here. Yeah. And it's not, you know, a lot of the frustrations with bear baiting is people setting up right on top of you. Yeah. Right. This guy's baiting here. I'll go 300 yards up and set up there. That might work in some situations in different states on different animals. Doesn't work here. And if you know that, I don't care if you're in the woods killing bears. I would love for you to be in the woods killing bears as long as you're educated enough not to be setting up right on top of somebody else.
Just don't kill my bears.
Exactly.
Right.
Stay away from mine.
It's not whitetail hunting.
Well, if you're born here, your family's here, you know, I was hearing him talk about your dad, you know, being out there hunting, and that's generational knowledge that's being passed down in Alaska, right? And how we do things, just like they have generational knowledge on the farm in Nebraska. I mean, they know how to do it, right? So a lot of times when you come up here, you don't have that benefit, you know, so you are just trying to learn it on your own. But it's about being ethical. I mean, it's just like if I'm driving down a trail and I see somebody, you know, propped up on a rock, and, you know, I'll say, hey, is this where you're hunting? Because I want to make sure I'm not hunting on top of you. I'll make sure I go another half mile down the road or a mile, whatever, and make sure you're not I'm not on top of you. You're not on top of me.
Yeah.
Just those kind of like introduce yourself on the trail, make a new friend, and talk about what it is that you're doing and what it is he's doing, so you're not interrupting each other.
Yeah.
Well,
and to what you said earlier too is how vast this place is.
Oh yeah.
Where I used to hunt, where I've been hunting. Sorry, where I have hunted deer in Ohio is the Wayne National Forest.
Okay.
And it's a pretty big area in some areas, but where my aunt and uncle live, it's it's still a decent swath for the area, but it's there's other hunters in there and everything like that. And it's kind of just like that. You can set up 300 yards away from somebody because there's not that much area to spread out considering the population, right? Population to land density. Up here, you could go 2 more miles, and it's not, you're not going to run out of land.
Yeah.
Guarantee that. Like, it doesn't matter how far you go, you're not going to run out of land.
Right.
So, I think that's a big thing for people to understand too.
Oh,
just the vastness of this place.
It is big. And people, it's just engaging in, I think God created us for relationships, and if you don't know, ask the question. I mean, people around here will help you. I don't think anybody intentionally hoards the information, but again, like you said, there's a lot of room out there, and you don't really have to scout for caribou, right? They're either there or they're not.
Yeah. I was going to say, save yourself the time.
And you'll find out where they are. You can probably watch just look at Facebook. Somebody will post something.
Right.
But it's just helping people, be successful. And I worked at Sportsman's Warehouse part-time for almost 14 years between Colorado and here. And one reason I enjoyed working there was just helping people.
Yeah.
It wasn't for the money. The discount was great. The money, I saved twice as much as I made. So
you just got to get the paycheck to pay for the house.
Yeah, but it was never a greater moment. I worked archery and the gun counter, but they'd come up and like, hey, I'm new to Alaska and I've got a hunt up on the Dalton Highway. I'm going up north Brooks Range. I'm not sure what to do, what to get, and then the questions start, right? You're like, okay, what are you going to be hunting? How long are you going to be up there? What month are you going up there?
Yeah.
How long are you going for? So then you could like, let's grab a shopping cart and then you can go through the whole store and outfit them with all the right gear. And then they thank you. And and then it's like, my only pay was like, hey, bring back some photos, man, and they'd always come back and say, what a great time. And thank you for helping them out. And I find a lot of joy in that.
Absolutely.
I think maybe just raising my kids like that, it just became second nature, to watch them do it. It's just fun to watch families get out there and just make memories,
Yeah.
So,
we get messages in here all the time, whether it's the Instagram or the emails on, success stories and whatnot. And, I've actually had the pleasure of talking to a couple of them on the phone, and going over the stories of their hunts. And that's same. That's the biggest payday you can get. Like, man, we heard this and we listened to you guys and we went out and we got it done. Like, awesome. And, or even if they didn't get it done, but they had a good time.
Well,
right?
That's some of the best hunts I've ever been on. I did not harvest an animal.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, it was the environment that I was in. I always think about where we live and think about it from an aerial perspective. Like when you're out there, like I'm actually on the end of the planet, literally on the end of the planet, as far north as you can get.
Yeah.
When we went up to Kavik, we saw a polar bear.
You showed me that video earlier.
Oh man, it was crazy. I was like, man, it'd be so cool to come up here and tent camp. And I saw that polar bear and I was like, nope, that ain't happening. I'll camp around grizzlies and brown bears all day, but I'm not camping around no freaking polar bear. But that was really cool. And I shot a caribou about 5 miles, just this side of the Arctic Ocean. I mean, I just think about where we're at. It's so cool.
Yeah. Just to wrap that one up, how'd that trip go? That Kavik trip?
We all scored really nice caribou. Everybody shot the biggest caribou they'd ever shot. And, the one guy, like I said, saw the polar bear, shot the polar bear. We saw, or shot the polar bear.
Whoa.
Full disclosure. It was a grizzly bear.
Wow.
Sorry. Shot the
Freudian slip.
Whoa.
Sorry, that was a mistake. Shot the grizzly bear day one. I mean, we saw Northern Lights were crazy. I mean,
I bet
the Brooks Range. I mean, and I told the one young soldier, I was like, we just ruined you. Like, you'll never duplicate this hunt.
Right.
What just happened here? I mean, this is just like a once in a lifetime hunt, so you're ruined. You might as well just leave. But no, it's,
or just keep going back.
What was it? There was that I want to say this was like 4 years ago, maybe, but there was like a 14-year-old girl that was out hunting with her dad and during the youth season, somewhere down in the southern part of the state, and shot like a 70-something inch bull, or maybe not quite 70, but it was a huge moose.
Yeah, that happens time to time.
And I thought the same exact thing. I'm like, this poor girl, like she's 14, 15 years old. And like, you're just going to be disappointed from now on when you look at moose. Like,
shoots a 64, like, nah, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, unless your dad is, just knows where they live and takes you there every year.
Right. Well, that's, another part I'm really passionate about too is trying to preserve the rights that we have right now, and so that we can maintain our culture for our kids and our great grandkids, something that's bothering me right now, I'm really passionate about is, some of the weight restrictions that we're seeing on our trails, like 101 mile on the BLM, it's sad because you've got lifelong Alaskans that probably don't have the legs that they had in their youth. They're out there taking their kids or grandkids on a hunt, and they shoot a moose or a caribou and they can't drive up to it and pack it up.
Right.
And they're being punished for something that they didn't do. And to me, it's not about the weight. Again, it becomes, are you an ethical recreational driver? I know when I take I have side-by-side, I have a 6-wheeler, and I have a snow machine.
Yeah.
And when my 6-wheeler or when I'm driving on dirt, I get it, I put it in 4 low, diff lock, and I'm just rolling down the trail. I'm not bragging about being in 2-wheel drive or anything else, about getting up the biggest hills and spinning out and tearing up the trails. Because that's what happens.
Throwing rooster tails.
Yeah. And I drove all over that country for years before the weight, the restrictions. And now it's sad when you go up there and you see the signs on these trails out in the middle of the wilderness saying that we can't go. Like, that just doesn't seem right to me. And I've seen 3 or 4 4-wheelers do more damage to the ground than a side-by-side.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the state needs to take some responsibility in it as well, because when you open up the 40-mile hunt to multiple caribou, which we all appreciate that, right?
Oh, sure.
I think we should be shooting bulls. I think the cow thing bothers me a little bit, and that's a different story. But when we open up to multiple caribou, we know what happens, right? Who comes up here? The Kenai, Palmer, Wasilla, Anchorage, everybody's here. And it's the wettest month of the year. August is our wettest month. And so when you put that much traffic on these trails, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah,
exactly. It's not really even the weight of the machines. It's the trail conditions. It's the ground. It's the time. But if we did that in the winter, when the trails are protected with snow and ice, it might cut down the hunters a little bit, and we'd be riding our snow machines on protected trails, and we wouldn't see that kind of damage.
One bull in the fall, and then if you want to do multiple caribou, do that in the
bingo.
Winter. Yeah,
it's really, I think, that simple.
It makes good sense because I mean, you got to think about what they do up north, with the oil fields.
Yeah,
crossing with insane amounts of equipment, and they're placing stuff on the ice and the snow, and then they pack up and they leave and can't even tell they were there.
Yeah.
That's the whole point,
Yeah.
It's like, that's why they do it that time of year.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same thing up there.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease because it only takes 10% of the guys that are actually out there to do it wrong, to make a mess, and then everybody starts complaining. And then rules change because everybody starts complaining.
And honestly, it only takes 2 people to complain.
We've seen that in other places and other situations that we're not going to rehash all this. I just had this conversation with a couple of hunters that I bumped into bear baiting. And we were talking about the Brooks Range sheep closures. And the one guy said, well, yeah, I heard it was because there's no sheep left up there. I said, dude, without going into great detail, I know a lot of people that know a lot more than I do and that fly up there all the time. It ain't because there ain't sheep up there.
Right.
Yeah.
It was because somebody started complaining because somebody was doing something stupid.
Yep.
and they complained to the right people and they got it done.
Mm-hmm.
So, you just got to, it's like you were saying, you have to be ethically responsible for what your actions are out there. And think about, you're not out there without observation from other people.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other people that see you that you don't know that they're watching you.
What was that, 2021 or 2022? There was over 2,000 trucks up off that highway during the fall season.
The Stee City.
Yeah, Stee City.
One of the saddest things I ever saw, and I was really disappointed that there wasn't some enforcement, was we came out of our cabin up at 12 Mile Summit, and as we were exiting the wayside there, I looked across the Stees to the Pinnell hiking trail, which is like 2-foot wide historic hiking trail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was 40-foot wide, braided.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not even supposed to have vehicles over there, and they just tore it up
Wow.
to the point that probably won't be the same again for 100 years.
Right.
Right. But where was enforcement?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they should have lined up at the bottom there and just started towing.
Waited for them to come back.
Yeah. And, but instead the people that are obeying the laws are the ones getting punished.
Right.
And so
Right.
there's got to be a way to overcome this instead of just making an easy restriction and just like, no, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And like I said, we live here because of the freedoms that we have. And, we can't lose those. We can't lose those freedoms, or it's hard now. It's going to get even harder, coming from the lower 48 and watching what's happening down there.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
If we're not careful, we're going to lose all these God-given rights that we have here. And that's why we live here.
Well, and I think the double threat to that is, and I think we were talking about this before the show started, but, building essentially an army of hunters.
Yeah.
And making sure they're educated and making sure they're ready to stand up for the rights.
Yeah.
And ready. They're not sitting on the couch waiting to hear the news about what changes came down the pipe.
Yep.
They're involved.
They're not the silent majority. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't, the only time you're a victim is when you don't do anything.
Yep.
Exactly. And so my recommendation is get involved, vote at the ballot box is an important thing.
Yeah.
And when, get involved with the board. I know the Fish and Game would love more people to get involved to help decide our fate when it comes to hunting regulations and things like that. So,
well, and we talk a lot about the local Fairbanks AC.
Yeah.
As a group, they're the advisory committee
Yep.
to the Board of Game. And that's literally like, if you were to break this down into government, that's your first step.
Yeah.
It's like they exist. Those are voted in individuals to sit on that advisory committee to represent the hunting community of Fairbanks.
Yeah.
And, not every community, but most communities of subsistence have size have an AC.
Yeah.
And that allows you to have a voice when these things come into play. They're going to the board meetings and fighting for fishing rights, moose hunting rights, sheep hunting rights, all this different stuff. They're the ones you submit your reg changes to. If you want to make reg change proposals, you submit it to them. The voted in members take a vote on it, yay or nay. Approve it, they take it to the board and they'll argue for it. They'll fight for your suggestion.
Yeah.
Because they're there to represent you and your community. So it's a really good thing to get involved in, and it's free.
Yeah.
You just show up. I think it's during the winter months. It's like the first Wednesday of every month. You just show up and you can they have a online thing you can tune into, just kind of webcam in.
Yeah.
Super easy to get involved.
That's awesome. Yeah. I got a call. I did a radio show a couple weeks ago and I got a call from somebody on the advisory committee. So they're actually going to come and talk at one of our meetings.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, to try to spur some interest and getting people involved. But for people that are involved, that would like to get involved with us, our program, we meet on Fort Wainwright at Building 4268 on Neely Road. It's the North Haven Communities Community Center, and we have a theater in there that's open to us. That's where I work, so I've got the key,
go.
and it's a pretty good venue. But we're finding that it is a little harder for some people to get on post with some of the lockdowns that they're having at the visitor center. So we're looking for some venues off post, close to still close where it's kind of centrally located for people.
Sure, yeah.
But we meet from 5:30 to 7, and we stay longer and just talk, and if it's a lot of interest, we just keep going. And so The first meeting we had was kind of a meet and greet, general concept explanation of what we're about. And then the second meeting we had Fish and Game come and did, Bob Hunter came, Austin came. They did a like all things hunting in Alaska and brought a great PowerPoint presentation. And, we can't be all things to all people, and we're not subject matter experts on everything, but we know who those people are. So
Right.
we're trying to help people learn how to navigate the websites. Here's what to look for. Here's what you're going to need. Here's what you don't really need. Some of those kind of things. So the third meeting was all things fishing because we were coming into springtime. And then fourth meeting was hunting on federal lands. We showed people, sportsmen, explained to them, there's a lot of game-rich federal land around us.
Yeah.
But again, you want to make sure you know how to do it legally and how to do it. And so we're trying to help out there. And then last week, our last meeting, we had MWR out there. And some of the programs that they've got,
it's fantastic.
It's hard to explain what they charge,
right,
to go on an ice fishing trip or a float trip down the Chena or the Chattanooga. It would cost you more in gas.
What were they saying? $60 for a float trip or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane.
200.
A guided float trip.
Yeah, a guided snow machine trip in the Whites, for like $200 for the whole day. And they drive you there.
Yeah.
Like you jump in their van, they fill it up, they take you out, you jump on their equipment, you spend the day with them.
Wow.
I mean, how can you, anywhere else, anything, any type of private, and if you've got a pass to get on post, you can use them.
Yeah.
So
for anybody wondering, I think they've changed the way the road works since I lived on base, but you're going inside the gate from Fairbanks, you're going on to Fort Wayne right there, immediately on your left.
Yes.
Now they were saying something you got to go up and like hit a roundabout or something.
Yeah.
Now
So when
changed it.
you really want to hit them on the exit out of
Okay,
the front gate. So you hit them, they're the last right turn before you exit. You can see all the RVs and boats and stuff over there on the right. But talk to Chris Bell. He's been our point of contact over there. Really good guy.
That's a fantastic program. I mean, because honestly, not only is this land vast in a sense that you can go out and experience it in so many different places in so many different ways, but a lot of people don't understand how dangerous that can be too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put a raft on some of these rivers, you might not know where that river's going to go. And it might take you a long ways out. Or, maybe you've never ridden a snow machine and you don't understand how the snow is here.
Yeah.
It's very different than Colorado snow.
Yeah. We had a pretty scary situation up on just a Chena, in a raft where we went under some sweepers, and it was not a small raft. And it was amazing when the bank had kind of eroded and narrowed up the river, and it did an immediate dogleg left. It was Father's Day years ago, and it was sunny, blue skies. It's more of a canoe shaped raft. So my wife's in the back, I'm in the middle on the oars, and her friend's in the front. Her friend had my wife, I think, was the only one with a life jacket on, but it was like a margarita cruise, right? You're just going down the Chena, no big deal. And so my wife's like, take your shirt off, get some sun. So I took my 500 off, my shoulder holster, I gave it to her to put in my dry bag, and along with camera and everything else. And I saw the river start narrowing up, and you could see some ripple in the water, and it went left, and there were some birch trees that had fallen across. And I'm like, I think I could portage and just walk it across, or I think I could shoot this. And as soon as I entered it, I was like, I can't shoot this. I am not going to make this. And we went broadside into the trees, and my wife was, it was rushing pretty good, and it was deep, brackish colored water where she was in the back. She was in the bigger branches. So I'm like, okay, we're okay. We're just going to pull our way to the shore, basically. And then all of a sudden, I just felt the raft tilt. And then that was it. And we went underwater, probably, I don't know, 20 yards, like bouncing under trees. And popped up on the other side. My wife's hanging onto the back of the raft. And my feet I'm trying to hold onto the raft, and my toes are just bouncing off the ground. And I look back, and her friend's still in the trees her head's underwater and her arms are coming up through the trees.
Oh.
And I don't know, by the grace of God, I was able to drag the raft back and grab her and get us all to shore. And then everybody else kind of came in their rafts. We had friends and family, and they're like, what happened? And I'm like, you don't want to know, you know? And that raft would carry 2 guys, a fully, field dress moose and caribou and all your gear for 10 days.
Sure.
That raft was a big $4,000 raft, and it just, we went underwater, man. What had happened is she was in the big branches and she stood up.
Oh.
And she pushed off, and that's what tilted us. So, so as I was going back, I was like, where's my 500?
Oh.
And I'm looking in the dry bag and there's nothing in it. She goes, I'm sorry. I'm like, what? She goes, I didn't put it in the dry bag.
Oh, man.
So yeah, that was a $1,000 pistol.
Yep.
If anybody finds one in the China, it's mine. So
this might be the podcast to put that out.
Yeah.
On, so.
That was a few years ago, but I was lucky because a friend of mine knew the gun that I had, and he found it was one of 500, and they stopped making them.
Was it the orange handled survival kit ones?
No, this one has like a brass bear engraved into the receiver.
Yep.
And it was one of 500. They don't number them, but they're all numbered one of 500. They only made 500 of them. So, a friend of mine, I told my friend about the story, and about 2 weeks later, he actually found one. His friend had one that was selling it.
Oh, really?
And so I was able to replace it. So anyway, but that's how dangerous it can be. It could happen very quickly. And, I'm pretty good in a canoe and a raft, but those things can happen in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And so again, we share those stories.
Yeah.
I've got one friend that's been here since, a lot of my friends have lived here before the pipeline. And one of them knows 7 friends that have disappeared in the Copper River Dipnet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
7. 7 people. And it took me about 10 years to go fishing there, because I was not going to go fishing there without somebody that had fished it for 15 or 20 years.
Absolutely.
It's a no joke river. People don't understand. You just don't go on down there and put a net in the water.
Right.
So make sure you go with somebody that's familiar with it, knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try it on your own.
Yeah.
So,
that can be the most dangerous thing you do up here.
Yes.
It can. Yeah. More
Bad.
than bear baiting.
Bad deal.
Yeah. Alaska's waterways kill, I think, more people than anything else up here.
Yeah.
And the
Arguably.
Copper especially.
Yeah.
The Copper, I would say that the Copper is the worst river in the state as far as danger goes.
Yeah.
I've thought about this a lot.
The Clutina's pretty rough.
Yeah, I've been in the Clutina. That one's rowdy
up
too.
river.
But it doesn't get the volume, I don't think, that the Copper does.
No.
As far as people goes.
I would say that's what probably makes the Copper
I think
so
the
dangerous.
Clutina is like one of the
Steepest.
second fastest flowing rivers in Alaska.
Mm.
The Clutina is really hard to walk in. It's
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. Well, you can hear the boulders underwater
Yep.
moving. I mean, it's that.
Walking out there, throwing out a lure and catching silvers. Yeah, it's fun when they're biting, but when you're having to move, it's like, okay, I really have to focus on not just getting swept out from under my feet here. And you're only in knee deep water, and it's all you can do to stand upright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a very fun river to have.
Yeah. I had a wake up moment last year dipnetting, and I was down there and I had my chest waders on and the water was super high. And so I was like, man, I'm just going to try and get out in that channel. Everything. I'd tried several different, eddies in several different areas, and it was getting late in the day. Didn't have time. And I waded out there over waist deep, and
no thanks.
It was, where I was waiting wasn't too bad. The water wasn't moving too bad,
good.
But I was right on the edge of that. And it dawned on me, pretty quickly. I was like, man, it takes one little bit of silt and gravel underneath my feet, washing away from under the soles of my boots.
Yeah.
And I'm gone.
Yeah.
I get in that current, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Just how hard it was to hold that net in the current. I mean, good night. And then your waders fill up with water and you're done.
Silt.
Yeah. Especially in chest waders.
Yeah.
You're toast.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if you have the belt on or not.
No.
It doesn't matter if you have a life preserver on.
Exactly.
No. It's
the life jacket is just so they can find the body down at Miles Lake.
Yeah. So I walked back and I was like, this is getting silly. But I mean, there's people that do that and they don't know any better.
Yeah.
When Jeremy, he'll transport us from his outfit there. the Clutina is always the scariest part. We get, for me, like we'll get into the copper. I'm like, oh, and we're in a Solar. Right. Yeah. It's like just the ride from the campground to the mouth of the Clutina going into the copper. I'm like, we get in the copper. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Because it's just so like volatile. It,
Yeah.
and the rocks are big and that mouth is, I mean, it's cooking. You get in the copper and you're kind of like, this isn't good either, but man, that was bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went with those guys and I never felt threatened or in harm's way. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a good system. We drifted in a boat, up from the bridge, subsistence side. And we just hammered them. But we had a process and everybody was geared up. There was no joking around. And there was no drinking on the boat. You weren't,
absolutely.
You were out there. You had your wits about you. Yeah. And, there's no room for error out there.
It's not a place where you knock cold ones back and stay up late.
Yeah, you're not shore fishing on some lake with a bobber or something.
Yeah, right.
It's like, dipnetting during deliverance. You're like, this is like freaking tough. Like, better be awake, right?
I like that.
Paddle faster, I hear banjos.
Yeah. Watch that bridge. See somebody on that bridge with a banjo. Move spots.
Well, I'm interested to hear some of your stories. But so just to wrap up kind of who you guys are at the mentorship program. So you guys meet monthly.
Yes.
You have a monthly meeting. Is it always the last Tuesday of the month?
Yeah, it's fourth Tuesday, depending on where, usually the fourth Tuesday. So, this time in July, we'll be meeting and we're actually having in preparation of the 40-mile hunt coming up in August. We'll have a local taxidermist there and also a local meat processor. Okay. So we really want to, teach people how to, proper trophy care in the field, how to disassemble your animal, how to quarter it, how to care for it, especially if you're going to be out there for any amount of time.
Yeah.
Especially in August, it's still hot.
Still hot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hides slip, meat spoils. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a fantastic thing to teach people. So.
I don't know if I know Larry Bartlett. I don't know if you guys know Larry Bartlett. I haven't seen him in a few years, but there's a really good video out there. If you haven't seen it, it's called Blood Trail. And it's on YouTube too. I think there's a part 1 and 2, but Larry's also a veteran. He owns an outfitting business on the Brooks Range.
Okay.
And but he did this really good video on proper meat care, especially for guys that are going to be out in the field for like 10 days or doing a float out.
Perfect.
Like a do-it-yourself float out of the Brooks, and so, you might kill a caribou on day 1 or 2 and you still got 7 or 8 days to float out. And, for people that are listening, you want to make sure your meat's properly cooled because if Fish and Game they carry a meat thermometer and they'll come up and poke it. And if it's warm, they're going to get you for wanton waste right there. If there's any spoilage. Yeah. So his video will teach you how to keep that meat cool.
Perfect.
It's really, really good. And I'm going to actually reach out to Larry and see if he'll talk at one of our upcoming meetings.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wanton waste is definitely one of the biggest tickets you see handed out during the 40-mile herd. Yeah. And transporting the head before the meet, things like that.
Yep.
If you're making multiple trips out,
Yep.
there's a slew of them,
Another big one too is guys getting back to the road. And they say, oh, you're heading back to town. I've got one more guy in my group that's still trying to kill one. Will you take mine back and take it to the processor? They get pulled over by a trooper on the way back to town. They don't have a transfer possession form.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a ticket.
It's a very easy thing to print off before you go out if that's what you might be doing.
Very simple.
Yeah. And it's not a lot.
Maybe just have one on hand, like in the event of an emergency where you got to hand meat off, like you're having a vehicle issue or whatever.
Yeah.
It's in the big game manual, right?
Never even thought of that
one. Yep. And you can find it on the website. It's literally one page. You just print it off and throw it in a sheet protector, keep it on you.
I pick up 5 or 6 big game reg books every year. I've got one in each vehicle. I've got one in my backpack. I got one in my side-by-side. I got one in my snow machine. I got one in my 6-wheeler. I keep them everywhere.
Yeah.
Because you may not know when you need, one's not enough.
Right.
I got a couple laying around my garage, a couple probably in the bathroom, they're everywhere. Yeah. So
Little light reading.
Yeah. Well, you never know if there's a question that pops
Right,
up.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the thing. It's the question you always have the answer to until you need to know it, and then you're like, "What? What is it? Is
I
that
had
season open?"
Right. Yeah, I had that moment in the bear stand on this last hunt. I was sitting in there with Tabitha, and I said, I know the answer to this particular question. And you know what was great is I went into my files app on my phone, and my regs had not been downloaded since I had to redo all my phone stuff after this season because my phone completely crashed.
Oh, man.
And it really made me upset. So after I restarted all my phone stuff and re-downloaded everything, my reg book hadn't downloaded, but I had the Fishing Game app, and that works offline.
That's what I use.
Oh, they have that on there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they have. It's broken down really easy to understand too. I love it because all of those pre-sections
it's categorized.
Yeah, it's categorized.
Oh, cool.
Information for bear hunters, general information, all those different, the ones you're trying to flip through and read halfway down the page to find that specific thing because they don't know how to put spaces in between the different parts. But then unit 1, unit 2, unit 20, unit 26.
It's all broken down.
Yeah, it's super easy to use.
Yeah.
When that app first came out, I tried to use it and it wasn't working. I was having all kinds of problems with it. I'm like, I ain't relying on this.
It works really good now.
But now I haven't had issues with it for about a year.
I have had some issues where, because it's supposed to show like what all tags you have, what all permits you have. And mine works most of the time. I've had it glitch where I have to like log out, log back in and all that. But once I do that, it comes back.
I hadn't opened the app in a while, and I opened it up, and I found this is all the current tags that I have, and these are last year's tags that I reported on. These are the previous, X number of tags, and I forgot all that stuff was on there. That it shows you your record on there. That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
but to what you're saying though, I mean, you can never beat a paper copy.
I just put it in a gallon-sized Ziploc baggie along with my tags and everything else. They go right in my backpack, and so I've always got it with me there. But
perfect.
And I've got 3 different backpacks for every day of the week. So there's one in each one. If I'm going out for a day or I'm going out for a week, or I got too much gear.
Absolutely. Well, let's take our second break real quick. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. All right, so I'm very interested to hear some of your stories. We talked about how stories is how people learn, right? And it's kind of why we're doing the podcast, and you're doing your program, is to help tell people these stories. And we just talked about the dipnetting stuff, and the dangers of the rivers and the water and stuff like that. So with that being like the most current thing going on, this comes out in July. There's not a whole lot of hunting going on. We talked about prepping up for hunting. That's what you should be doing this month. Make sure you have everything. Don't be sorting through Sportsman's last minute, but or at least don't say we didn't tell you not to. But so talk a little bit about some of your stories down there, like from your first year dipnetting down there to like what people should look out for, how to stay safe, like what your recommendations would be.
Yeah, and even working at Sportsman's Warehouse, you get a lot of people coming in and asking, how to fish the copper. And like I said, it's first recommendation is find somebody that's done it successfully for a long time and go with them, and find a mentor and go down there and do it safely.
Yeah.
The second best is probably getting on a charter, and maybe doing it from a boat and drifting from a boat. The times I did it, I drifted from the boat, never felt in danger ever. Like I said, the captain was serious about what we were doing. We were on a mission to catch fish. There was no horsing around. We were there to catch fish.
And they're probably the most experienced boat captains you can find.
Yeah, I mean,
river.
he never turned the boat off, right? There was a system. We had 6 guys on the boat, 4 guys on the shore on a cutting table. So he stayed on the boat, never turned it off, always turned perpendicular to the current, the nose out away from the shore. He had reading his depth finder the whole time, so he could tell you, okay, guys, we're coming up on a shallow spot. I don't want you to lose your net on the bottom, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, start bringing it up. We're at 10 feet here, 8 feet here, sometimes shallower, right? And so he was the captain. We had one guy, like a fishmonger is what we called him. And they were both wearing bicycle helmets, safety glasses. I mean, they looked a little nerdy, but
like the whitewater raft.
Yeah. But, when you start 4 guys are swinging poles around, I quickly understood how many times we hit those guys in the head or in the face with poles. You're kind of confined to a boat.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're hitting a big run and it looks like, like knights, with lances is just in the boat. And so,
it's funny you mentioned that. Just not to interrupt your train of thought there, but Chris here and I, we were out beaver hunting this spring, and same thing. And I never thought about that once, but you shoot your beavers and you take a net and you try to net them out of the water before anything. And several times he's like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, net handle,
putting the net away or trying to get it out and everything.
Yeah. And so we were all life jacketed up on the boat. We made sure everything was safe.
Yeah.
The fishmonger, his main objective was help get fish out of the nets because you know how they get tangled up in there, and then cut the fins off. We had a big Tupperware trash can on the boat. He'd trim the fins, they'd go in the trash can, and we'd go back upriver and drift down again. And then if that side died, we'd go to the other side. But when we filled that can up, we would go back to shore. The 4 guys that were cutting and filleting fish and bagging them would get on the nets. So it was a perfect break. And the guys that were netting got off. 2 guys are cutting fillets. 2 guys are bagging them and putting them on ice. And so we would, it's easy to catch about 500 fish in a day and a half, and it was a serious mission, and we did it every time, like successfully and safely.
Yeah.
Never, and legally. We counted the fish. We followed the King's rules at the time, whatever it was. We did it right. And then when we'd get home, the next day we would go to a buddy's house, and he had an outdoor fish station already set up. We'd all bring our vacuum sealers, and I was telling you a little secret, but they would trim all the fish to like table fare. It would look like meat, behind the meat counter, quality fish. And you're talking over $20,000 in fish you're catching in a day and a half,
man,
per pound.
At today's prices, probably more.
People don't quite understand the fishery that we have here. And then we'd all vacuum seal, and but one of the tricks that I learned that was great was they would get like produce baggies, and you put you have grocery store, and then put your fillet in a produce baggie, kind of roll it up, fold it over, put that in your vacuum sealer bag and vacuum it and seal it. And you never had to clean your vacuum sealer one time. No juice came out, sucked all the moisture into that baggie. And it was great. You see people try all the types of things, right? They put paper towels on their fish or whatever, and then you got to thaw them out and peel the paper towels off. No, the produce baggie. We call it a slime bag because it's so easy. You just slide the fish in there, roll it up, put in the vacuum sealer, seal it, done.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
And sucked in all the moisture and everything and kept everything clean. So,
wow.
Yeah. So these guys, I learned a lot in just my first few trips down there. And, nobody got hurt. Like I said, it was, we had fun after, but there was no, like you said, you weren't tossing back cold ones or drinking, getting on that boat.
You're on a mission.
You're right-minded, So same thing if you're out hunting with a rifle, right?
Absolutely.
You're not out there doing that.
I mean, you have to be.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's, you have to be in the right state of mind. That's where you hear about the accidents.
Right.
The people that are out there thinking it's,
it's a party.
It's
not a party.
Don't get me wrong. I listen to the Yoopers, but you shouldn't be, making a moose camp like a Yooper camp.
Right.
You know, like this, not the way they sing about it in their songs.
Yeah.
It's a great band.
Well, I think the thing is,
but it's for comedy purposes. Don't die out there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we're all trying to make awesome memories, right? You want good memories, and good memories include doing it right. And you're not, you didn't shoot the animal out of season that's hanging on your wall, or you did it right. Like that's part of the fun. And if you can't do it right, and you don't do it right, you don't do it unethically, or you don't break the law to get that animal, because then what? I don't want to sleep with that.
Yeah.
No,
I think that whole going with somebody experienced.
Yeah.
Or at least attending something like your meetings monthly and learning from people who are experienced.
Yeah, at a minimum, if you go down there, you really want to watch the surface that you're standing on. You don't want to slip off wet rocks. You want to tie off. You want to have a life preserver on. You want to be with somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't want to go down there and do that by yourself. If you go down off the creek, there's a big cliff you got to walk down. You hear that story all the time. I haven't done that one, but I know people that have lost their four-wheelers down that and into the river, never to be found.
Yeah.
So luckily they didn't go with their four-wheeler.
Yeah.
But I know people that have rolled
That's a
their
one-way
machines.
trip if you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know I have no idea if you want to tell this story on the air or not, but you talking about the boats, and stuff like that. It can be a very safe way. But I remember you telling me a story about the guys down there that had a boat failure.
Oh yeah, that was a Clatina.
Yeah.
And I might butcher the story up a little bit, but my understanding of it, because my friend that I went dipnetting with down there is one that actually witnessed part of it. He was an experienced boat captain, but he would not even go up on the upper Clatina to go kingfishing up there, because the water, like you said, is so steep. It's a steep, fast river, and he didn't know it. So he would go with a guide that knew the river. And so him and his buddy were up there with the guide, and they were fishing in an eddy or calmer part of the water. I don't know if they were tied off or what, but a boat came up past them with two adult males and a young boy. And the guide recognized the boat right off the bat, saying, "Hey, that's an MWR boat. That's a rental boat. It's a rental boat, and somebody's up here that doesn't know this river. They shouldn't be up here." And it wasn't that much longer. I'd say within 20 or 30 minutes, they came drifting past them, never asked for any kind of help or anything. But they drifted out of sight downriver. And then there was a call on the radio saying that there were 3 souls in the water. And, everybody was like all hands on deck, try to rescue these people. So they rolled up, went down river, and they went around the corner, and there was a guy naked on the shore. So that's just telling you how fast the water's going. It ripped his clothes off his body.
Wow.
He's standing on the shore yelling, "Where's my son? My son." And thank God, another rafting guide, I think it was a female, grabbed the boy. I think she actually may have fractured her arm or her wrist, if I remember it correctly. But they saved him. My friends pulled. Well, that guide saved that young boy. My buddy and the other guide and his buddy, they pulled over on the shore. This guy was already hypothermic and in shock on shore. I mean, he's scared to death for his son too. They got him clothed and back in the boat. And then the other gentleman they found dead. He was already wrapped up in the trees. So the boat disintegrated. They had hit a boulder or something up there, broke the drivetrain, lost all power, didn't yell for help. I think they didn't know what really happened. So they probably thought they were fine.
Right.
And that boat disintegrated. I mean, came apart into pieces, and it was a metal hull boat. I mean, it was a metal boat.
Yeah.
So that river's like a wood chipper, if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the dangerous part about, Alaska.
Yeah.
And I like to point this out, at no point do we want to exploit any stories of this nature,
No.
you know, but I mean, you know, those people's families, I mean, they just thought they were going out for a fishing trip.
Yeah.
You know, and that's as simple as it probably sounded. Oh yeah, I've heard people do this. People dip net salmon in Alaska. I'm going to go do it. I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and then that just ends up not being the case, you know, and
those stories really hit me hard because, you know, you got family members and loved ones, children involved. I mean, we as fathers, grandfathers, husbands, you know, we're the ones that are usually going to be the ones responsible for our family safety. And you know, I remember taking my kids out in the Rocky Mountains. You know, I taught my kids how to drive my truck at 12 years old, you know, and
as you should.
And I, you know, I didn't know if there might be a situation where something happens and they need to go get out. But that was in a dire emergency, but I never took them so deep into the mountains where they couldn't get out on their own. You know, you always had to limit your hunt to their ability. I think we talked about this at the last Alaska Mentorship Program.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
You know, don't confuse your enthusiasm with capability. You know, we're all excited to go. Doesn't mean we're capable of doing it. Maybe not at that time. We just need a little help or, you know, the right gear or you know, be educated. You know, it's there and this is the awesome state.
It is. Yeah.
I love everything about it. And it's just, you want to make sure you know what you're doing when you get out in it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's one thing I liked, you know, about what coming about with your program there, and kind of what we're doing here at the Northern Hunter. And, you know, for a long time, it was hard to get hunting information about this state. Everybody was real tight-lipped. And the people that, you know, were talking about it, it was a cool factor thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I'm going to do this and it's cool and look at how cool I am kind of thing. And there were like some good information, you know, on other podcasts in the state. I'm not throwing any, you know, hate towards anybody, but, you know, it was hard to kind of pick apart how to do.
Right.
Like you saw the what you could do. And that's what a lot of hunting media is the what you can do. This is possible. But there's not a lot about the how, you know, and the how to be safe, the things to think about that you don't think about, you know, normally. The things to plan for that most people would never think to plan for.
Yeah.
That's what's important, and that's what gets people home alive. And you can't have a great story if you don't come home alive.
Yeah.
That's the biggest, most important part.
And like I said, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not out there. You know, I mean, we all make mistakes. So every time you go, you learn something new. You know, I remember when I'd go and I didn't have you're talking about some of our first trips, you know, I killed a caribou, my first caribou. It felt like a sheep hunt. You know, I was with a guy that was probably 20 years younger than me. We were driving along and we're looking for caribou. Nobody had really seen any. And they're like, oh, the caribou are gone. We're hunting moose, blah, blah, blah. And I told him about this spot that I wanted to go look at and pulled up my truck. I put the window down. I pulled up my binoculars and there were the caribou about 3 miles up on this ridge. And my buddy is like, hey, we can go get those. I'm like, dude, that's a long way. Like, that's a long way. And it's like all uphill and like chest high blueberry bushes and rocks and everything else. That's a long way. And he's like, we could do it. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And so we walked up there and we each killed one. And he was able to get, his was a little smaller than mine. So he was able to get all his in his pack. I had to make 2 trips for mine. And so left the head up there and I was going to caped it out, left that first load up there. And he goes, well, we can make it back up here. And I'm like, I don't know, man. You know, it's going to be dark, you know? And I said, I'm not walking up through blueberry, you know, there's just purple bear crap everywhere.
Oh yeah.
All grizzly crap. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to store this real nice for the evening and then I'll come back up in the morning and get it if we can't make it up tonight. So, I did that. I got down, it got dark. The best thing, I mean, I was like 120 miles north of town. You know, and now it's like 6 o'clock in the evening and I'm like, my wife's expecting me home. You know, I was just a day hunt.
Right.
You know, so now what? You know, I didn't have an inReach. I didn't have a sat phone. So I made the drive and made the drive all the way home. Got the first load of meat home, took my buddy home, dropped him off. I think there was a bunch of road construction on the Steese at the time. So I don't even think I got home till like almost midnight.
Man.
And I knocked on my son's door and I told him, hey, you and your friend are coming with me. We're getting up in 4 hours and we're driving back up there. I got to go get the other half of my caribou. And then we got to come home and then we're driving down to Valdez and going fishing. So it was one of those turn and burn like we've all done.
Mm-hmm.
The enthusiasm, right? And then as you get older, you realize, yeah, that's a lot, you know. So went up there, got we did it. I mean, we went up there, got the other half of the caribou, came back home, hooked up my RV, and we drove to Valdez and went fishing, you know. So on like 4 hours sleep in like 2 days.
Yeah.
But my first investment was an inReach after that trip because I realized I could not communicate at home. You know, what if I would have broke down?
Right.
What, you know, anything else could have happened.
Yeah.
I would have slept in my truck, no problem. You know,
Right.
Made a campfire, slept. I had plenty of food and water with me. That would have been no problem, but it would have saved me a long trip.
Right.
You know, so having communication, I now have an inReach and a sat phone.
Mm-hmm.
I have both. So especially being a cabin owner. And again, you're being responsible for the people that you take out there.
Right.
You want to make sure that you have a way to get emergency services.
Yeah, for sure.
Out there. On the Kavik River hunt, I did something that I had never ever done before. And as I was caping my my caribou, you know, on a field of tussocks, I happened to be with Sue at that time. Everybody else had killed their caribou, and I was using a Havilon, you know, and it's like a scalpel, right? And I was shifting my body on the tussocks, and my hand was plenty far away from my knife was plenty far away, but when I went to shift, my body weight shifted, and I didn't cut myself. I plunged the Havilon right into my wrist.
Oh boy!
And I immediately knew what had happened. I mean, you could barely feel it because it's so sharp.
Right. Yeah.
But when I pulled it out, you know, a stream of blood shot like 2 feet, and then I applied pressure, and my first thought was, my wife is going to be so pissed. You know, like this. What did I just do?
I like how that's consistently your first thought in a lot of these stories.
Because she always prays over me and tells me to be careful, and then all of a sudden something happens. But you know, I was thankful that Sue was there, because I was like, Sue, and she's like, hold on a second. And she grabbed some paper towels and a game bag and kind of made like a makeshift field dressing for my wrist, and said, hey, get back in the rig, and I'll finish your caribou. I go, no, I could do this. She goes, get back in the rig, you know. And by that time I was getting a little lightheaded, you know, and I think just the whole adrenaline of what was just happening. And ate a Snickers bar and drank some water and gave myself 10 minutes and said, okay, I'm good to go, and came down.
Ranger candy.
Yeah.
Make some new blood.
Came back down and And it was, you know, I felt fine, and we got back, and, you know, and this is how Alaskans are, right? I got back. They saw that I was injured. All those guys grabbed my caribou, finished it all up for me, took care of it for me.
It's awesome.
It was, I really appreciated that because I had never done that before. But the one thing that made me think about was I've really never needed, I have some heavy duty first aid gear in my backpack. I've got a surgery kit. You know, I've got field dressings, I got tourniquets, I've got everything. It was all in the bottom of my pack because I never need it. Not now.
Right.
It's at the top of my pack. Because if I was by myself, right, and I had to take my pressure off of my wrist to dig through my pack, I don't know how much blood I would have lost trying to do that.
Right.
You know, so that's something to keep in mind is, hey, I need that first aid kit readily available, where I can access it very simple with one hand if I had to. And good. You know, and it ended up when I got back that luckily I was coming back the next day. I left the field dressing on it just like it was. Never took it off.
Yeah.
But I had to go to first care, antibiotic shots, antibiotics for 2 weeks. They did an x-ray to make sure everything was out, make sure I didn't cut anything else. And he's like, if you would have went a quarter of an inch more to the center, you would have been in really big trouble. So I just missed, some heavy damage. And it was just something so simple, so taking a little bit of time, you just shifting your weight on those, it's uneven ground, and it just, I just fell forward with it, and it just plunged right into my wrist, probably about that deep.
And on those super sharp knives, it doesn't take a lot.
No, they're nice, but you got to be careful. I got cut gloves now too.
Yeah.
So I got the higher cut gloves that I take and I use for when I field dress because of that situation. So that's another thing I learned.
That's a good, that's a good little pointer there.
Hey, I was going to say, I'm already sold on
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to AIH tonight.
My son got cut. My son got cut pretty bad, helping a friend gut a moose up off Chino Hot Springs Road, and same type of knife. And this guy is a seasoned hunter. He's killed everything, and he's ethical and everything else. My son was kind of pulling back the ribs and everything, and it just got in the way, and he cut right across his hand, and pretty bad. It could have been a lot worse.
Well, I haven't cut myself bad enough to be terribly worried about it yet. But I mean, when you're in there separating that sinew from, right underneath the spine and everything, getting the top part of the lungs taken off and everything. I mean, it's not hard.
Yeah.
When you've got your one hand holding the paunch back and the other hand cutting.
Oh yeah.
It's easy to
Very
cut yourself.
Easy. Well, my thing was I was a 2-hour plane ride out of town.
Yeah.
And probably half hour or so from camp. And, again, even if I had a sat phone or I had a call for somebody to come out there and get me, if I was by myself in a different situation, that would have been.
You still have to survive long enough to get rescued.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
If the weather is good that they can rescue you.
Which isn't exactly the time it takes to get there either. It's the time it takes to find the right dispatch.
Response time,
to get people there. They might be in bed. They got to get to the plane. Or
6
the
hours.
helicopter.
Weather might be great there, and weather might be terrible here.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a time I have flown to Kavik where we have not been delayed at least one day.
Yeah.
It would be due to weather.
Yeah, that's a hairy area. I used to fly through there a lot going to work, and it was...
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's some beautiful country. It's magical.
I remember when I have more money and more time, I'm going to play down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize, Sue has a website and you can go on there and go up there and stay at her camp. And
that's cool.
Yeah. She's a real deal, man. She's as hard as woodpecker lips. She just,
I love that expression.
Yeah, she is.
That's one of my favorite expressions.
Yeah. My boss was a ex-special forces colonel. And so he uses that one quite a bit. I can't take credit for that one.
The other one I like that's real similar to that is tougher than the back wall of a shooting range.
Oh, that's a good one. I haven't heard that one.
That is a good one. Yeah.
Especially that new one down there at Alaska Ammo. You know what the biggest caliber allowed in there is?
I don't know.
Any guesses?
50.
Inside. Yeah, 50 BMG.
Wow.
In interior range.
And you're shooting it
that's
50 yards off the side of the Johansson.
That's so stupid.
You hope that's a strong wall.
It's so crazy that they allow that because, even if it's rated to it, great. But I don't want to be in there when somebody's shooting that thing.
Right?
I think you have to be suppressed too when you're in there with that stuff. Yeah, I don't think they let you just.
I asked them about it. They didn't say you did.
I've been in the store
I've seen
before.
Guys put some big stuff in there, and they're like, put a can on that.
Yeah, maybe they would. Maybe they would. I don't know. I watched a guy go to buy a 300 Win Mag, and they were like, "Do you want to shoot it?" He goes, "Yeah, let me shoot it first."
Wow.
No suppressor, nothing. Just walked in there.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about like a 50 BMG.
Well, I mean, there's a big difference. I agree.
300.
I agree, but a 300 is big enough for their little range.
Where I'm from in Kansas, there's a lot of, it's mostly private land there. It's like 95% private land or something like that. And so a lot of the shooting ranges, at least in like Wichita area, are indoors. And they'll have like 100-yard ranges and whatnot. And one of them's really cool. The one my dad has a membership to, and you can see the top part of the range sticking up from the parking lot. So you're parking, and it's like a half-buried shooting range.
Oh, okay.
And you walk in there, and you check your rifles in or your pistols or whatever, and you go in, and it's a cool place. It's actually really neat. It's a huge gun store too, and but they did not require suppressors, and they, at least at the time when I was living down there, and man, they should have. Because there was one, you're required to have your ear pro in, right?
Right.
But you put the little foam plugs in your ears, and then somebody's trying to talk to you, and you maybe you're one of two people there, and pull that plug out. What'd you say? Boom!
Oh,
yeah.
Still hear the ringing from that.
Yeah. Alaska Ammo requires over the ear.
Do they? Yeah, that's good.
You can't do in ear.
Yeah.
And they make some great in-ear, but the problem with in-ears is so hard to check. I think they just
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a huge liability thing.
Yeah.
I had a question, Mike.
Yeah.
Where are you from in California? I'm intrigued.
I was born and raised in Fontana, California. My dad built Kaiser Steel in the 50s.
That's wild.
He was a masonry foreman there.
I grew up in Big Bear Lake,
No
California.
way.
Yeah, and my wife, she went to school at Loma Linda, and literally right
No,
there.
we're all right there.
down the road.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I was curious about that. That's cool.
We're homies.
Yeah, no
We're
doubt.
homies.
Transplants.
Yeah.
bunch of weirdos.
That's awesome. Well, that's the one thing about California in the old days. You could go surf in the morning and go skiing, night skiing in Big Bear at night. We used to do
no
that a
kidding.
lot.
Yeah, like
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
right after high school, I got a dirt bike, and I remember we'd go snowboard. We'd go snowboard in the morning, and then it would get sloppy, and then we'd load the dirt bikes up, and then like a couple times we'd go mountain, desert, beach.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Just to do it, like just so I could go home and tell mom I did all that.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I thought you were going skiing this morning. I did
Yeah.
that too.
I raced motocross when I was younger. My brother was a really big motocross racer, and so I kind of tagged along after him. But
We just
Yeah.
raised havoc. We didn't do anything that cool.
yeah.
You
I
got
wasn't
into
cool.
snowboarding, didn't
I wasn't
you?
cool. I tried, but
You were a big snowboarder, weren't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big piece of my life there. In my
Nice.
youth. That
Big
was,
Bear. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
That's
yeah.
cool.
What year
We-
did you move to Fairbanks?
2009.
Did you ever go to an archery shop outside San Diego, Roman Archery,
I did
in the
not.
60s or 70s? My
No.
grandpa had a big archery shop down there,
Okay.
and he would guide goat and sheep hunters out on the Catalina Islands before
Oh, yeah.
before it became a golf course.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
They
yeah.
still hunt out there.
Yeah, for now they're trying to put a stop to all that.
Trying to shut that down
Yeah.
too.
Well, and so my wife went to school in Santa Cruz.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know where. I don't know the geography.
Way north.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Way
like,
north.
so probably it doesn't have anything to do with you guys. But she always tells me, and I mean, meeting you two, I believe it. But she's like, when you get out in the country,
Yeah.
like there's a
Yeah.
lot of actual like down to earth redneck like hunting, like
Yeah.
fishing fools, and they're just out
Yeah.
there living their life, and they just try to dance around the regulations and the laws, like,
Yeah.
and they're try to stay.
There are
You know.
some seriously redneck people in California.
Yeah.
I don't think people get it.
And I've always had I think California, I think LA, but she's always trying to convince me. And she's like, we gotta go. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many beautiful places and like the people are great once you get out of the city and all this. And it's
well,
like,
we moved from Glendale to Big Bear in the 90s.
Mhm.
And that's when my parents were like, we're going to go live at our weekend house. That's going to be our forever home. Right. And I mean, it was an adjustment because I mean, LA,
Mm.
that's where we grew up, was in LA. And then we moved to the mountains. And I mean, it was, and those people lived pretty old school when we first got there. And this is a big adjustment and tons of
Yeah.
snow and people hunted. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, oh, this isn't enough.
Yeah.
We're going to,
Donkeys running around the woods in the desert.
I mean, yeah. And dirt roads there. I mean, there wasn't a lot of asphalt. There
Nope.
wasn't, I mean,
Huh.
stoplights and asphalt's, not that old there. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
wild place.
Hmm.
You would know.
Oh yeah, no,
I mean-
yeah. I mean, I was born and raised in Fontana. We lived a couple different places. I lived down south in Canyon Lake near
Yeah.
Temecula for a while,
Yeah.
and then we lived up in like Victorville, Apple Valley area.
Yeah.
And then when I was younger, we actually lived in Yucca Valley for a while out there
Mhm.
near Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
So just off the backside, Lucerne
Mhm.
Valley, off of Big Bear.
Like we used to go catfish in the aqueduct and
Huh.
striped bass, like those giant striped
Don't
bass.
fall in
Like,
the aqueduct. You don't want to fall in the aqueduct either.
No.
Yeah.
We've yanked some people out of there swimming by.
Yeah, there's nowhere to. The walls are like this, and they're slippery. You can't.
Yeah.
Once you fall in, you can't get
Well,
out.
we used to tie off in some spots when we fished for stripers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we go at night, and man, that was some good, and that's super illegal too.
yeah.
Statute of limitations, right?
But yeah, it's all good. They can come get me.
Yeah.
Do we have extradition laws here?
would that be like Ship Creek on steroids?
No, the aqueduct is
Yeah.
it's hardcore.
Is it?
Yeah, it's real steep banks, like
Yeah,
Mike's saying.
it's concrete.
And it's concrete, and
concrete.
it's like so you'd have different spots, and I mean, you're walking it. You wouldn't even think there's fish in there, and you just land these like 30-pound
Yeah,
stripers
they
in
catch some
there,
big fish.
and then we'd grill those stripers up, and they were good. They were clean because
Yeah.
the aqueduct's clean.
Right.
It's clean moving water and big catfish. But yeah, you go in there and there's a couple. They got some ladders and some stuff to try to extract yourself along the way, and that water's cold too.
Yeah,
that water never really seems to warm up.
It doesn't stop.
Probably
it just keeps flowing.
Yeah, but that's good fishing.
Yeah.
And I remember the sheriffs running that. Well, the sheriffs would monitor it, but then you'd have the state guys and you guys ain't fishing in there, right? Just a big handful of rods hiking back to the truck. No, we just walked down and saw the fence. We realized you couldn't.
Yeah. 10 arrests, no convictions. That's my saying. 10 arrests, no convictions.
Did I hear or anything? I thought I heard they're loosening up the bear hunting regulations in California because of issues they've had with population, like opening more new tags and stuff like that.
I'd have to ask my buddy Troy about that. He's pretty up on like the hunting scene in that area, and I know there's like their rams are pretty big in Big Bear right now. Like guys are not rams, sheep.
Okay, yeah.
Like I think it's bighorn sheep.
Really?
Yeah, there's a pretty good population there, and
that's a good economy for that area.
Yeah, and I know a guy that guides there, and you wouldn't expect that, right? But
that's crazy.
I think they're loosening up some stuff, but it's California. What I think's happened a lot is people voted so hard one way, and there was a certain demographic that dictated how things were going to go with things, and a lot of people are becoming more conservative. They're like, that's enough. We're pumping the brakes.
Yeah. Nope. And that's good.
There's some good patriotic Americans in California, believe it or not.
Say. And if you don't say something, nobody's going to know what your opinion is. Same with the hunting regs.
I know they killed a lot of bears in California this spring. I've got a guy that I know down there, and he's all over social media. But he's big on that and publishing the numbers of this is how many bears were shot in California. This is not a highly publicized number, but it's thousands, and thousands of black bears.
There's a lot of hunters there,
and big ones there.
There's big Central California and up north. There's some,
but people
bears.
Keep it quiet because, if your neighbors don't hunt and all your people in your social media circle don't hunt, then don't post about it.
Skinning a bear out with your garage door open.
Well, so I was going to say, my sister lives in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
And so I've played around in Colorado a little bit. I haven't hunted there, but I've been around and seen the sites. But he, I want to say, as the story goes, he was just going to the shooting range one day, and he was coming home and unloading his case. When I come back from the shooting range, I've got two slung over
multiple
each shoulder.
Trips.
They're not in a case. And walking into the house, but he had it in a case, locked away the way you're supposed to, politely. And apparently somebody called him in for just taking a rifle from his truck in his driveway into his home and concerned about it. And it's
he's a mass shooter.
Man, I couldn't imagine. And it is a beautiful state, and I'm sure there's lots of stuff to do and lots of great people. But man, when your neighbors are like that,
dude,
I got a buddy that bird hunts up there in Big Bear, and he it'd be a long rabbit trail to get into the regulations firearms wise, but he every year I think he hunts chukar and
quail,
and another buddy of mine in quail and mountain quail, but you can shoot quail with a shotgun in the valley. People will call 911 on these guys all the time, and then what happens is the sheriffs, a bunch of the sheriffs hunt and stuff, and so they end up chatting these guys up, and how's bird hunting going, and it just turns into nothing. But it's just great. These people just freak out.
And I love the difference up here.
There's a gunman walking down the road. It's no, there's that guy's going hunting.
Where I live, there's tons of squirrels, right? And I'll be out front doing something, and you hear a 22 crack off.
Yep.
All I said, get them. It's not even a second thought. It's just,
there's some spots behind my house that people go shooting. So every once in a while, right? And I'll go back there and shoot if there's safe directions to shoot where there's no houses and stuff. If and
sure, hopefully
most people are conscious of that. I haven't had any bullets go through my house. I know people that have, right?
Yeah.
But I got that new wheeler, right?
Yep.
And one of these episodes we'll have to do some gear reviews on new gear we used this spring. But I was breaking it in. Just got it, and I had a buddy of mine lived not crazy far from me. He's like, and I was supposed to go work on his house for him a little bit. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna throw the tools in the wheeler, and I thought he'd really like this gun that I did this whole setup on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just strapped it to the wheeler.
Yeah,
right.
As you should.
Hung it in the little hammer straps on my tool bag actually because it fit just right.
As you should.
Right. But and I just had the thought there's not a lot. I know there are places, but there's not a lot of places where you can just strap a gun to a wheeler and go right down the neighborhood.
Right.
There's nowhere left. I mean, this is it, right where we live.
And nobody gives a second thought to the fact that there's a guy riding down the side of the road.
We live outside the city limits of North Pole, and we all know each other on our street, and we all shoot. We can shoot. We all got 4 to 5 acres, and we have safe backstops and everything. And we do it safely. Times where we get nervous is all of a sudden you hear an AR rattle off at 1 in the morning, and somebody's popping 30 rounds off. You're like, okay, that. And then we have a group text on our block. It's like, okay, who's shooting?
Yeah.
And
who's been sipping the apple pie?
Yeah. So that's when we go, okay, that's
Put her down.
Not cool.
Who's been dipping into grandpa's cough medicine?
Yeah,
exactly.
So that's usually the only time we kind of get a little nervous. But man, we live in a special place.
Yeah.
We
100%.
I don't think there's anywhere on the planet like this. I mean, even just between here and Anchorage, right? I mean,
that's a huge difference.
It's a world of difference.
Yeah. Anchorage is pretty bad for those that are not into our culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and again, just to be fair, there are a lot of great people in Anchorage.
Oh yes, there is.
But there's a lot of weird rules.
I got a lot of buddies down there.
Yeah, me too. And we have a lot of people who write in questions. Hunting out of that area, and they're just as annoyed with the weird rules as
we went into KFC one time coming back from Kenai there, and the guy's like, "I won't serve you guys," and I was like, "Why?" He's like, "You guys got guns on." And I was like, "Whoa, really?" I was like, for real?" He's like, "I'm dead serious. Like, get out."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh." And he's like, "Yeah, you guys must be from up north." And I'm like, "Heck yeah, man, America." And my buddy, I'm like, "Let's go put these things out in the truck." He goes, "I ain't eating here." He goes, "We're good."
Yeah.
And
ain't giving them my money.
Exactly. You're not getting my money.
Yeah.
I remember when we bought our property down there where we're at, and my wife and I are coming. She's a transplant too. She's from Simi Valley originally.
Oh, okay.
So she's city, but I mean, it's still pretty rural out there too, and farmland, and people shoot guns. But we're driving down our street, and this little girl is on this giant 4-wheeler. She's this tiny little girl on this giant 4-wheeler. She's got little Youth 22, and she's just got rabbits just bungeed across the front of that wheeler. And I told my wife, I'm like, this is, and she's like, "That is so adorable." I'm like, "That is so American, man."
That's so cool.
I was just so stoked.
I love
awesome. That's a felony most places. Right. Difference in an helicopter.
Yeah.
So awesome.
I like seeing that with grouse too, and people do real good with grouse, and they're just laid out on the wheeler.
I just love seeing kids when they're it's like, because we were raising heck when we were that age, but doing different stuff.
But I was telling you, I lived in Yucca Valley, and on the weekends after high school, during quail season, there's a couple of me and my buddies, we put our camo hunting vests on and our 20 gauge shotguns and a backpack with the, a little pup tent, and we'd go hunt in the desert, but we'd walk a mile through neighborhood with their shotguns, carrying them.
And we were
and nobody said anything. I mean, that's just was the culture, right?
Mm-hmm,
we could do that, but I'm older than you guys, so there was a time where we used to drive to school with a gun and a gun rack in our back window.
We had guys that did that in high school in Big Bear.
Yeah.
And I'm 40 years old. I mean, that's it's amazing how times have changed.
Yeah.
But I remember us walking with that's what we would do. We'd go out to stand in front of Kmart, and we would ask people to buy us chew and 22 ammo.
Yep.
That was $5. And you get the
you were a redneck.
You get the 25-year-old dude, give me the money.
I think
what do you guys got?
Brothers from other mothers, man. I've done that.
But it was, and no one hassled us. And I remember the
Red Man and Levi Garrett. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
$5 for 500 rounds of 22.
Yeah. Just
back in the
sick.
day.
Just trying to stomach it. And But and I remember us walking, with our 22s and stuff, and the sheriffs would stop us and, what are you guys doing? We're going shooting. Okay. You guys know where you're shooting at? You know what's beyond your target? Yeah, yes, sir. All right, you guys be safe. And I mean, it's just amazing the way things have changed. I mean, even I tell people that, and I'm like, that was really but
it used to be a great place.
Yes,
it used to be a great place.
And even the law enforcement here, it's like when they find out you are legal, no big deal. Like, okay, sure. Like, somebody called in, they'll come check it out. They'll be like, okay, yeah. Look on the maps. Yep, there's no houses that direction. I've had it happen, and they're like, "Oh, carry on, sir. We'll tell them not to worry." Like,
our friends teach a concealed carry course, and we went to it. I took my wife to it. I really wanted her to really feel more comfortable with the handgun.
That's a really good idea.
And the interesting part for me was, I've been around guns my whole life, but my friend Chuck and his wife, they teach the program, great program. I think it was a 2-day course at the Tanana Valley. That's where we met when we did the course. But he was a state trooper and also a veteran. But the interesting part for me, what I learned a lot about was the actual law.
Yeah.
About when you need to pull your weapon and defend yourself.
Yeah.
And they also taught first aid, trauma and stuff like that. And it was really good. We have a cabin in the woods. My wife, I'm like, hey, you may have to, if I get attacked by a bear, you need to know what to do. Not alone, not just how to defend yourself in our home or out in public, but, in the wild, if you really had to draw your weapon, which is probably more the case. I said, you need to learn how to shoot the bear, not me, in the process. So really great course. I really recommend it. And I know we have constitutional carry right here, right? We can carry. So
stand your ground laws and
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what that course, what I learned during that.
Yeah.
Things
they run that quarterly, don't they?
They've got a really good program, and I can get you their information. I don't have it with me right now.
I think I went through it like 8 or 9 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, they have great courses like defensive, like couples, like if you want to do defensive rifle courses. And how to defend your home as a couple. And they'll put you in situations where you're moving up on a target and covering for each other. Same thing with handguns.
Yeah, I'm getting my wife into CQB, baby.
I'm all about this. Let's go kick some doors, mama.
Right.
Yeah, so
calm down, guys. Calm down.
Really good program. But I'll get you the information so you can share it to any listeners that want to.
I went through the concealed course back when Joe Nava was still doing it, which was awesome.
That
was...
Yeah.
Didn't my wife do that at the same time?
Yeah, we did it at the same time. Right. Yeah. We neither one of us were old enough to concealed carry. Right? I don't know if we were even old enough to legally own a gun. You can carry a pistol in Fairbanks from when you're 16 years old without a note from a parent. You can open carry.
America.
And with a note from the parent, you can carry from 14, which I think is great. But we could still go take the class and go through it all, and we couldn't get the permit obviously at that time, but that was really cool. Did that with Joe Nava, and I'm really glad we did because, like I say, I learned so much about the law and what you actually can and can't. Because you hear people all the time. Somebody walks down my driveway, and I tell them they're not allowed to be here. Then I'm just gonna, I'm gonna shoot them if they don't leave. Right? Well, that's a really good way to go to jail.
Yeah.
It depends on the situation. Depends on the situation. What they do when you tell them to leave.
What they're doing. I agree. But if they're just standing in the driveway trying to talk to you.
And you're going to mortgage your house to
stay out of jail.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So you're going to probably lose everything.
I would say, knowing if you can defend, what the difference is between defending persons and defending property, and brandishing rules and all that.
You see a lot of people get pumped on that, like that are new here. They come here and they're, I can carry a gun and this and that. And I remember my reaction to how gracious all the laws were. I'm like, first thing I thought, I'm like, everybody else must have a gun too, so
right.
I better know what's going on here because this is a great way to get dealt with.
Makes it a polite society, right?
It does. That's why you don't have road rage like you have in the lower 48.
Yeah. Nobody's hardly anybody's hopping out of their car in the stoplights and punching windows because it's a good way to have that window come back at you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it does happen, but usually with the new people.
Little
So,
hard candy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We have the right to carry. I think everybody should. I mean, the last thing you want would happen would be for you to be in a situation, whether it's a movie theater or Fred's or anywhere, where all of a sudden the only thing you have to defend yourself with is a can of peas or something.
Right.
You're covering, you're over your wife and your children trying to defend them, and you're like, my gun's at home.
Was that Boulder that happened? I think
there's been several cities.
There was
Colorado.
I remember there was, or no, it wasn't Boulder. It was south of
Aurora.
I think it was. Yeah, I remember when that happened.
It's happened all over the place. I mean, we don't hear about it that much anymore.
It's happened here.
Yeah.
There was just an incident. Was it last winter? Beginning of last winter?
It was the year before.
Oh yeah. There was a guy that walked.
I don't want to get too into it.
The East Side Safeway.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just indiscriminately, just popping rounds off, and then he shot somebody at the front door. Yeah.
That's right.
That's one of those situations. Like if you have the ability and the know-how, I mean, that's a
situation.
That's why you're there.
We're leveling stuff up.
Right.
Yeah. That's why you're there and educated and ethical.
Exactly.
And,
And you're practiced and know what you're doing.
Not hitting unintended targets, having that knowledge and that training.
It was such a random thing too.
Yeah.
That was
sad.
I think they asked him and he wasn't real sure what he was doing there. Or whatever happened.
Well, I knew people who went to school with him. And he was mental health.
Yeah.
That's right.
Definitely. Shouldn't have had a gun.
Yeah.
But
well, they'll get one if they want one.
Right, that's the thing. Yeah, that's true.
Gun control laws aren't going to change guys.
I wasn't saying there should be a gun control law. I'm just saying somebody in his life should have done better.
But since we were talking about lower 48 stuff and comparisons between here and there, you teased a story before we started recording that I was wondering if you'd go into about your first bear.
Oh, my first bear?
Yeah. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. No, I shot my first bear in the Gila National Forest. I read books on the Gila. I'd seen it on the Outdoor Channel. I mean, it's just a magical place to go hunt. And a friend of mine had, and I'd never hunted with dogs before and didn't know what that would be like. But if you've never chased dogs through the mountains, get ready. Get ready. It's like training for the Olympics. I mean, it's just like an unreal thing. And anyway, I shot a, just under 6 foot bear, but, killed a rattlesnake on the way. I got pulling cholla cactus out of my legs. I mean, it was an awesome hunt, a great memory. And I'm friends with him till this day. And a lot of people, don't understand. They'll say, hunting with dogs or bear baiting is not sportsmanlike, right?
Yeah.
We hear that a lot.
Try it.
But it's like, but the thing is I know a lot of friends that I grew up with, and even when I became a new hunter, that would get a bear tag over the counter, do a spot and stalk. They'd see a bear 200 yards, 150 yards, and kill it. They had no idea if it was a boar. They didn't know if it was a sow. They didn't know if it was a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. They didn't know if it had cubs. They just knew it was a bear, and they shot it, and they go up there, and it's a cub.
Right.
Where when bear baiting gives us the ability to manage the wildlife properly, gives us an idea. We're up close and personal. How many bears have you guys let walk?
A lot.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot.
Because they are not that bear. They're not the one that's losing the teeth, and they're not the one on the back side, that older boar, or whatever we're targeting, right? They're not that bear. So it's a great way to manage the game. Gives us the ability to get up close, see what it is we're hunting, see if it's a sow, does she have cubs?
Yeah. Well,
is it a cub?
Yeah.
And then, so the same with the dogs, we treat the bear, at that point in time, it was like my very first bear. He looked like good bear, cinnamon bear.
Nice.
And my bear goes, that's a respectable bear. I think we should take him. And I trusted his, he was a guide. So, and he just took me out as a friend. So yeah, it was a great memory. I mean, that was just, I didn't know at that point in time that I'd be moving to Alaska, killing a lot more bears,
right?
Or hunting grizzly bears. I mean, I thought this could possibly be the only bear I shoot in my lifetime, And so, He's not a trophy bear, but he's a great memory. He's on the wall.
Yeah.
And, to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same with trophies. That's, yeah. I don't know. Like I have respect for trophy books, but I don't feel like people should manage their success based on comparing it to other people.
Not at all.
I think that's a good way to just be disappointed.
Yeah.
Just wait till you shoot a big one, James. I'm just kidding.
There we go.
I'm just kidding.
I've got some nice animals on my wall, and I just every morning when I wake up and I look at them, I can tell you everything about every one of those hunts.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's that. And to me, that's a trophy. The story that like I was talking about. There's some of the best hunts I've ever been on. I never killed anything.
Yeah.
But these hunts, I actually harvested something, but something else happened, or I was with a special person or a friend or my kids or, my son. One of the best hunts I've ever been on is my son, Mike Jr. We didn't get to hunt for about 10 years. He was in the Army. He went to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And he was a group designated sniper there with confirmed kills in Afghanistan. So, he was at Fort Richardson. We had moved up here. It was like God just brought it all together, and it was kind of nice. So he got out of the Army, and we had a chance to take him on a 40-mile hunt. And so we were with some friends up there, and I'm a big glassing guy, man. I just I can sit behind binoculars all day and never get tired. So we're setting up on this ridge, and I'm glassing out across this valley, and it's like a ridge with like ribs coming off the ridge, like a spine with ribs coming off. And about 3 miles away, I spot a single bull by this little Charlie Brown tree, at the end of this spine.
Yeah.
And we're with a couple other friends, and I'm like, I just spotted a bull caribou, and let's go get him. And they're like, that's going to take you like an hour and a half to get, we had to get in side by side, go up through a rock field. It was just nasty to get to it. And they're like, that's probably take you an hour and a half to get to him. And I'm like, it's the only caribou we've seen.
Right.
The only one we've seen in like days. We're going after him.
Yeah.
So we get up on top of that ridge, and we followed all the way down. And where that caribou was at that Charlie Brown tree was probably like 600 yards off the top, maybe 7. So we parked the rig up there, and I told my son, you get up on top. I'm going to get on the lower quarter side of this little spine, and we're going to walk out to the end and see if we can find him. So it did. It took about an hour and a half to get over there. It's 3 miles away. And at the very end of that spine, the train just kind of brought us back together, like perfect. And there's that little Charlie Brown Christmas tree about from me to you. And I told my son, I said, if he's anywhere, he's going to be right up here. You get in front of me and get ready. And we took like 2 steps, and my son put his hand back, like stop. And he gave me the antler sign. And all of a sudden I saw those antlers. I could see the antlers stand up like that and turn. And I just said, shoot him. And he just, bow, right there. I could have shot him with a bow.
Yeah.
So we shot him at like 35 yards.
Wow.
From 3 miles to like 35 yards. And he was bedded down. We came up right on top of him. And
nice.
And my friends couldn't believe it.
That's awesome.
Like that's the best hunt I think I've ever been on, especially not being able to hunt with him for 10 years.
Yeah.
And,
that's awesome.
And that was really cool.
Yeah.
Get a little emotional on that one.
I'll never forget. I was talking to a buddy on the phone. I call him moose season something, and I was not in the field. I was in town. I had a question. I called him. I was like, "What you doing?" He goes, "I'm moose hunting." You got cell service? He goes, "Yeah, I'm up on a hill where I glass, and I've got cell service." He goes, I'm looking at a moose here. He's a nice moose. I'm in an Bull area. And he told me where he was. So I'm like on my maps. Like he's one of those people that doesn't keep that stuff quiet where he hunts, which I'm okay with when he's talking to me. And anyway, so I'm looking like, oh man, that's any bull really? And he's like, yeah. And he's telling me like these moose he's seeing. I was like, well, why don't you go get it? Oh, it's too much work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not too much work because he gets a moose every year. No, he's got a moose like once in the last 5 years.
Mo just like starts packing.
And I almost did. I almost said, I'm going to come meet you out there.
He called me. He's like, dude, you're never going to guess what this guy's looking at. You want to go for a ride? No.
But I was so like,
it was too late.
You're looking at
got more phone
moose,
numbers now.
Legal. Right.
Yeah.
And he didn't get a moose that year or the next.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he couldn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't willing to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's what so much of it is.
Yeah.
I would have, I'd give anything some years to be looking at multiple legal bulls that I could choose which one I would think is the least amount of work to get to. Right.
Yeah.
But hey, that was him. But
Yeah. Well, I think that's the one thing too for a lot of guys that are new and they want to plug in, with people is a lot of us have a group, right? You got a circle of friends that you hunt with or family, and you have your special spot. And you got to respect that. And especially when it comes to moose, caribou is completely different. You might have your favorite camping spot, but the caribou are there, they're not, right? And I've met more friends in my caribou camp that, just from handing out coffee or soda or helping with tools or whatever along the trail. I've met a lot of friends like that.
Yeah.
But, you got to be willing to be a part of that circle, and you got to blend in and feel blessed to be welcomed into something. And it takes work, to be part of a group like that. And that means you're helping set up tents. You're helping break down camp. You're helping to cook. You're doing your share in camp, right? I mean, that's what we all do. We help each other with our animals. We help each other with everything. And if you think you're just going to show up and just go pull a trigger on something, you're probably not going to be welcome into that kind of circle.
No, that's
so
right.
you really got to appreciate being invited into the circle. And if you want to stay in the circle, understand what it takes. And a lot of it's just respect and ethics and being a good person and not taking advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, you may not get to shoot something that first year or 2 years, but you'll probably learn more from that group than you'll ever learn anywhere else.
Yeah. I was gonna say one of the first groups I moose hunted with was just a group of guys, great dudes, fantastic dudes, and that's exactly how it was. Somebody gets a bull down, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah,
everybody's helping out. Everybody shows up. We're quartering this thing out. There's literally a dude on every leg.
It's you don't leave that guy hanging and go, well, I'm going to go try to get my own moose.
Exactly.
No, we're all going to start cutting.
And there would be those guys that showed up some years and they weren't there next year.
Yeah.
So I mean,
if you want to be invited back, you got to put in the time.
Yeah. A lot of hunting in Alaska, I mean, you can do, individualistic hunting. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
There's fulfillment in that.
Yes.
It's a amazing goal to face or to chase. But there's a lot of hunting in Alaska that is communal.
Yeah.
It's very community oriented. It's sharing meat with your neighbors. It's, we're going to go out and hunt this together. You're trigger man. We'll split the meat at the end, and it's, a lot of it is that way. And if you can get into one of those groups, that's the best thing you could possibly do.
A good friend of mine, it took me a few years to get my first moose. And I sold a rifle after 2 moose that I did not harvest. You don't go out and see moose every year, right? Or legal moose.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it took me 14 years to get my first nice moose on the wall. Wow. And I only had 2 other opportunities, and apparently I blew both of them because I thought I hit both of them, but I searched for days. I was not, I'd shot animals at that distance, 300 yards.
Yeah.
Anyway, I sold the rifle after it. I was just so pissed off. Yeah. So anyway, but my friend put me on a spot, and I went up there and it was last day of the season. I went up on, he said, go hunt my spot, and he's invited me up there a couple times, but I called him and said, hey, I'm going to take the last day of the season off. Would you mind if I go sit on your spot? I wasn't just going to walk in on it.
Right.
And he's like, no, go get it, go do it. And I just, life had been busy and I just needed a little bit of time with God on the side of a mountain. And I really, at that point, didn't even care if I killed one.
Yeah.
And
that's the best therapy right there.
Yeah. And I got up there, first thing on the way up there, can't tell you where it was at, but I'm driving up there and a bull walks out in the middle of the road, like 25 yards in front of my truck.
Nice.
And it's not quite dark and there's nowhere to really pull over. I mean, it's not quite light yet.
Right.
But I couldn't believe when he walked out, he just turned right at me and looked at me and I'm like that's a 55-inch moose right there. I'm looking at,
You have
and
good insurance.
And then he looked.
You have good insurance on your truck?
No, I didn't hit him. No. There was nowhere to pull. There was nothing I could do. It was just wow. But I was really thankful that I got to even see that. That might be the only moose I see today, but that was so freaking cool to be that close to that big of a bull. Absolutely. And he wasn't spooked or anything. He just walked off and took off. So I went up to my area and went in, and we were talking about Ear Pro, and my buddy Chuck that taught the concealed carry class turned me on to the Walker game ears. They look just like this, but they got the volume control.
Yeah, I've got a pair of those. Yeah. Yeah.
I won't ever hunt without those again. I always keep the foam, outers in or on my hat just in case. But man, I hunt with those because we can hear each other just like we're talking now. But and you can hear all kinds of things, but super, super good gear. So anyway, I was sitting up there and on the side of that mountain, and I took my range. I got some Leica range finding binoculars and found my ranges, so I knew how big the area I was hunting and everything else.
Got
and
your kill zone.
Yep. Knew what my distances were. That tree's 100 yards. That's 200 yards. That's 300 yards. And so I'm just sitting up there, and all of a sudden those Walker game ears, man, it's like, it sounded like a grizzly bear coming through the trees. And I'm like, what the heck? So I look over, and I'm like 300 yards, there's a cow and a calf that came down right below me, Nice. And, the way the clouds are sitting in the hills and the colors, the fall colors, I'm just like, man, this is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, who else is doing what I'm doing right now? I'm sure there's a lot. It's last day of the season, but, but it was just so,
at least here.
Yeah, it was just so beautiful, and I was just content, and then they walked right below me about 100 yards, just cow and a calf. And then about an hour later, I just never took my eyes off this clearing, and all of a sudden I just saw a flash of antler, and I ranged him. He was like 308 yards. And then as he was coming, he got, it was like 295. And then a cow called, and he stopped, and he didn't stop broadside. He just kind of turned his whole body right towards me. And I was pretty open on this hillside, and I was like, I'm not making another noise.
Yeah.
If he's going to come, he's going to come. Otherwise, if he turns, I'm going to shoot him, but I didn't want him to pinpoint where I was at, so I just stayed quiet. And then he started going, he probably stopped for like 2 minutes, and I thought he was going to come, and he didn't. And he turned, and he just kept going the way he was going. But it was about another 60, 80 yards. He would have been in the willows, and I wouldn't have had a shot. So I was like, oh, I've got all kinds of shooting sticks at home, right? And I've got my bipods, I got everything. And I left my bipods on my other 300 Win Mag, and I didn't bring my shooting sticks. And I'm like all doing yoga on the side of this mountain, trying to freaking get in a good shooting position, and because it was just not a great spot where I was at, and on an angle and everything. So I found my solid spot, and I cow called one more time. And he spun, he stopped, and then before he could spin all the way, I just hit him. And you could hear it just pow. I'm shooting that 200 grain Federal Terminal Ascent bullet.
That's a good bullet.
The 300 Win Mag?
Oh,
yeah.
I'll say what I shoot.
For factory ammo, that's about as good as it gets.
Super accurate, super lethal. I was super happy.
Yeah.
That's the Federal?
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Terminal
shooting
Ascent.
the bait stations this year.
I bought a bunch for my 308 too. I'm kind of a big Model 70 guy. So, so anyway, it hit it, and he lunged forward behind some spruce trees, and I could see his antlers, but I didn't know if he fell or if he was down or what. So based on some other previous experiences, I never took my eyes off him. I jacked another one in there, and I watched that tree for 30 minutes. And I didn't see anything move. I could see his antlers. And so I did a really loud, obnoxious cow call and didn't move. And then I did really loud, obnoxious bull grunt, and nothing. So I grabbed my pack, never took my eyes off that tree, and walked up on him, and he was down. And
Nice.
it hit him, and he just fell forward and died. And he was 52 inches. And
Very nice.
Perfect.
so he's on the wall right now, and I'm like,
Perfect.
when I first put him up there, I'm like, my wife is not going to like this. She's going to be so pissed at me. and then I've got a couple caribou up there and a couple muleys, and I had some whitetail, and I had my moose, and man, it was a childhood dream, man. Growing up, my dad had he was a big hunter, loved hunting mule deer and elk, but I remember growing up in the garage, he had a picture of a moose, a black and white photo of a moose. And I know he always dreamed of shooting one, and
Yeah.
he didn't ever get to do that. So,
Yeah.
so me getting to be able to accomplish that dream is just like kind of helping him to fulfill his, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, special moment. So I get to see
Yeah.
him every day now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fantastic.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
It is a reminder, to chase those dreams and make sure that they go through, and as often as you can.
Yeah,
So,
I've told my kids, it was a big risk moving to Colorado. I didn't know anybody,
mhm.
but tomorrow's not promised, and you gotta. There's a little bit of prayer involved in that, and not just being reckless. You got to kind of plan properly, and
especially with a family.
you're
Yeah.
responsible for everybody, right? And
Yeah.
so, my wife would say, "Well, what if we find ourselves without a job?" I'm like, "I know how to cut wood. Whatever I got to do to make money,
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
we'll do."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
whatever you got to do. So, same thing moving up here. We didn't know how it would work out,
Mhm.
and like I said, it wasn't easy at first, but it just makes you appreciate it that much more when you have to work that hard to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that come up here with success stories with nothing but a duffel bag on their back and a wad full of cash, or maybe just a handful of cash, not even a wad, but
yeah, and it's had a lot of opportunities, for through my company for promotions and more money. And
mhm.
I told them I'm not willing to move. I'll help and I'll travel and here and there, but if I had more money, I just want what I have now.
Right.
Right. And
Mhm.
so I tell my kids all the time, it's like, it's so important to wake up where you want to be every day. You
Mhm.
can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
And so when I wake up, my spidey senses start tingling when I can look out my window and see the trees, and I see my mounts, and just, we built a log home in 2013. That was another childhood dream that I didn't, you just dream about these things. And
Right.
God's been really good to our family, and we've been blessed. So
It's amazing.
yeah, it's just kind of, yeah, that's another show.
It is. Yeah.
how that all works out,
Recently experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So,
it really
a
is.
lot of miracles. So
Yeah. No, and it is one of those things, I find myself occasionally becoming ungrateful for, where, whether it's the cold, it's been -40 for 3 weeks straight, never creeping above -20, or, I'm stuck in traffic on the way to my job. And, you're sitting at one stoplight, you can see 5 other stoplights from that stoplight. And it's just, you get in this mentality where you just start to lose that gratitude for what you've got and where we are, and then you spend 2 seconds out in the wilderness and it's just right back.
Or go
I
down
love
to
this
lower
place.
48 for a few days.
Right.
And you come back here and you realize, when you're landing into Fairbanks, and you go, are those headlights or a porch light?
Mhm. Yeah.
You don't even know. It's just, there's so few lights coming in, and it's just so great.
I do love that.
Yeah.
Looking at this state from the air is just amazing.
It is.
Honestly.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, the balance in life, how it all works out. This is our passion, right? What we're talking about is hunting and the outdoors. And a few years ago, it was like I lost my joy of hunting. It was really kind of a scary moment. And, I was spending so much time and money and effort planning. And it's good, clean fun, right? I'm not going out to the bars. I'm not chasing women. I'm not doing all these things, right?
Right.
I'm not gambling. I'm just planning hunts, and I do that a lot for my friends. We I'm kind of like the camp master. Like, we're setting it all up and organizing it, and then one year I remember I was just stressed out the whole time trying to plan it, spending all this money, doing all this stuff. Finally got out to camp. Still stressed out, hearts racing, finally got out on the side of the hill and just sitting there, and I was like, God, what's going on with me? Like, I'm here, and thank you for this beautiful wilderness. And he just said, I've been waiting for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you get things out of balance, you know, and I'm a man of faith, and God wants to be first. And when you replace him in that order, it could be anything. It could be your wife, it could be your kids, it could be a hobby, it could be drugs or alcohol. You start putting other things first, and he'll remind you that he's first.
Absolutely.
And so it's still my passion, but I don't do what I used to do in terms of just that is my life.
The volume.
You know,
Yeah.
You know, and when I have found for myself that when I put him first, everything else falls into perfect order.
That's the way it works.
So, and I'm older than you guys, so I'm just sharing that with you to save you some time and struggle. As you get older, it becomes a little more apparent. You know, so looking at my family and my kids and grandkids. I mean, my parents were 40 when they had me, so my grandparents were actually gone.
Oh, wow.
I never knew my grandparents, but I know what it's like to be a grandpa to 18 grandkids, you know? So even though I didn't have that relationship, I always adopt. You guys got grandpas? Because if you do, I'll adopt them, because I've adopted all my friends' grandparents growing up, because I was always envious of that relationship, you know?
Yeah.
So now I get to have that with my grandkids. Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
18, man, that's a legacy.
Yeah, it really, really is. It's really hard to believe, you know.
And how many you say are still here in the state?
I've got 11 in the state, 7 in Tennessee. I got 2 boys that live in Tennessee, and everybody's here.
Starting an Arctic generation of the family.
Yeah, so. It's really cool. It's the first people in our family that you know. I mean, this generation, you know, we've actually got grandkids that were made in Alaska,
right?
You know, which is really that's a cool. It's cool to claim that.
Yeah.
So,
did you have all boys?
4 boys and a girl. My oldest is a girl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
So,
yeah,
they're all pretty great.
Yeah, that's great.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I got a call. It's kind of a real quick short story, but you know, we were on Building Alaska, right? And a year ago, last Thanksgiving, I get a phone call, a message on my phone saying, Mike, and I could tell it was an old man. He's like, Mike, my name's John Kondus. Call me at this number. I might have some information for you. John Kondus? I don't know a John Kondus. That's like my last name, right? So I call him, and he's like, Mike, thank you for calling me back. He goes, please don't hang up. He goes, I got a couple questions for you. What was your dad's name? And I said, Edwin A. Kondus. He's okay. He goes, what was your mom's name? And I said, Jenny Kondus. And he goes, I thought so. He goes, your dad taught me how to drive before World War II. He goes, I'm 90 years old. I'm your dad's cousin. We lost track of him after he left Ohio and moved to California in the early 50s.
Really?
Wow.
And he goes, I'm here in North Carolina with my nephew, who's my age. And my nephew, and we're all sitting here celebrating Thanksgiving, and my nephew goes, Uncle John, do we have any Konduses in Alaska? And he goes, no, it's just the half a dozen of us between Florida and here. He lived in Venice, Florida. And he goes, well, there's some guy on TV right now building a cabin in Alaska with our last name.
No kidding.
And so they were watching Building Alaska, and that's how he found me.
Really?
So he was 90 years old, and him and his daughter, they did not know us, but we started heavy phone conversations and everything. And a year ago, this last June, just a year ago, they flew up here.
Wow.
And stayed with us for like 10 days. Took them to Valdez, Prince William Sound cruise, you know.
Perfect.
We went to the, you know, Arctic Harvest and the breweries and the pipeline. We took them everywhere, Alaska, right? Santa Claus house, you name it. We did it all. And then he had a walker. So we propped him up on the front porch at home, talking about shooting off the deck. And I got my Ruger 10-22 out and set a target out about 50 yards. And first shot, bullseye, you know, like 50 yards.
Yeah.
I'm like, John, when's the last time you shot a rifle? He said, the Korean War.
Whoa.
The Korean War.
He never got rusty.
Whoa.
No, it gives me chills. Like,
Yeah.
he's the closest thing to my dad. that I have.
Wow.
And because everybody else is gone, and so he confirmed a lot of stories that my parents had told me about my grandparents, and then he filled in a lot of blanks. I mean,
that's great.
It was like a miracle
Yeah.
to like, how did that all happen? Like they just happened to be sitting down at that moment in front of the TV to see that show. And he told his nephew, he goes, I want to know who this guy is. You get me his number and I'm going to call him. And he did. And now he's got this, he's like, I can't believe we have this whole other family. Cause I'm like, okay, I got 5 kids and 18 grandkids.
Yeah.
And all those kids have a spouse. So there's another 30 of us. So
wow.
That's incredible.
That's not a coincidence.
no, not at all.
What a blessing to just connect family.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way across the country like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Venice, Florida, all the way to North Pole, Alaska.
Yeah.
And then for them, he actually had a walker and like a wheelchair, but he was so inspired and motivated by this. He went to the gym every day for months so that, because his daughter was telling him, look, we're going to go to Alaska and Mike's going to take us on adventures and we're going to go do all this stuff. So he came up and he barely used anything. I mean, it was crazy.
Incredible.
Crazy.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway, I had to share that with you.
Yeah, that's a special story.
That was super cool.
Yeah, that's really,
Thank you.
really an amazing thing. And I mean, you hear all the time these days of what is all these DNA groups these days and people finding long lost family and stuff.
23andMe.
Yeah, Ancestry.com.
Right.
But I mean, to find it that organically, just
Well,
happened to be.
My grandpa, hopefully, like, I can't go to jail for the things he did, but he was like running alcohol during Prohibition from Canada down the Ohio River into West Virginia.
Yeah.
Wow. And my dad would tell me these stories when I was young, and I was like, that's not true.
Right.
Well, John confirmed it. My grandpa knew Pretty Boy Floyd and a couple other gangsters that were like,
wow,
like serious, like crazy. He goes, your dad always took care of everybody. Or your grandpa. He was like, one way or another. He goes, I never saw him without a suit or a gun or a briefcase. And
that's a good legacy to leave behind.
And he owned a bar. And he said, but he was a good man. I mean, he did what he did. But after the Great Depression, John and his brother were walking down the street, and this black gentleman back at that time, grabbed him by the shoulder. They're just walking down the sidewalk in the town. He grabs him by the shoulder and he goes, are you Angelo Kondus's boy? And he's like, no, sir, that's my uncle. It kind of scared him. And he goes, well, let me tell you something. He goes, my family would have starved to death if it wasn't during the Great Depression, if it wasn't for Angelo Kondus. So that's the kind of man that he was.
Just looking after everybody.
He did.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a completely different generation, different time, but I'm glad to know the stories were true, and that he was, he was a good man, that he cared for his neighbors, and he did what he did, but hey, just it's a wonderful thing about a lot of what you could call American outlaws. They were good people that just took care of people no matter what.
And now all the stuff they did, it is legal now.
Right.
Exactly.
Just
they were just ahead of their time.
Nobody was ready
so
for
cool.
that.
Oh, that's fun.
Well, speaking of people that took care of, people, one of the people that you had mentioned earlier in the show that took care of you, you're now doing some business stuff for kind of before we wrap up here.
So Butch Whiting and his family, his wife Nikki and his girls, we actually just went down to his daughter's wedding in Idaho in July, and so we got to see everybody again. But Butch, one of those guys, he was a contractor that we worked with in town, and like I said, when we moved here, we didn't know anybody, and he invited us over for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and then Christmas and Easter, and we just became family, and very quickly, and just loved them. And anyway, right before he moved, he informed me that they were going to, him and a buddy of his, because he's a war veteran, he was an Apache pilot, but it was always a big hunter. He loved to hunt. But he was invited to kind of into this camo group, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were going to start making hunting camo. And they actually became one of the top 3 bidders for the U.S. military camo.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the company was Cryptek.
Mm.
And, that's the only camo I have in my closet anymore. I mean, I had a lot of stuff, but I just love their gear. And it's a veteran-owned company.
Yeah.
There's a lot of military units that are still wearing this stuff in the field right now. A lot of special ops, they're testing out the equipment and using it.
Yeah.
And there's several different patterns. This hat right here is like the Black Typhon. That's pretty cool. I really like that. And I myself really like the Highlander. I think you've got that hat.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
It's just amazing. If you go try that Highlander on and lay it on the tundra or anywhere out in our woods, it's like crazy how that stuff blends in. And the quality of the gear is really good too, because it's, their slogan is, from the battlefield to the backcountry.
Yeah.
It's been in a lot of television shows. It's in video games. You see vehicles dipped in this.
I had an AR wrapped in that stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Kyle was on the pro staff. So it's an American Sniper in the movie. Actually, Butch was with Chris the that weekend before he was.
Oh, no
kidding.
Killed.
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
So, So it's again really amazing some of the relationships that form out of just meeting people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Cryptek, we see a lot of different gear up here right now, but I told Butch, this is where Cryptek was born, right here in Alaska, and we really need to make sure we see it on the shelves. And a lot of people buy spontaneous. You can go online to their website, go to cryptek.com and watch their video on their backstory, and it's very impressive how these guys started something out of nothing, and also being veterans.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an American-owned company. They're not left liberals or tree huggers or anything like that. I'm just saying, these guys are.
We like it.
Yeah, they are us. And, I want to give money to organizations like that and support organizations like that. A lot of these other companies, and they're privately owned. They're not some national conglomerate that is making just a bunch of money and using that money to support things that we don't support.
Yeah.
And
that's a big one.
And so, before you go and buy some of this other gear, do some research on who they're supporting. And that'll help you decide where to put your money.
Yeah.
But, Butch said he'd come up and talk with our Alaska Outdoor Mentorship Group.
Perfect.
And talk about the kind of gear that you'd want for different situations. And again, we're a seasoned hunter. They're a big sponsor of Eastman Outdoors. If anybody's watching the Outdoor Channel, there's several shows on there that you'll see their gear on.
Yeah.
And but I want to help them get a foothold here in the interior and in Alaska.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'll be helping them with that.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's always good to have options for quality gear that you can get readily accessible.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, I love that you brought that up, because there is so many of these companies that people buy gear from that you find out years later were, supporting anti-hunting stuff.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not a hunting company, right? Like, I mean, you have your Stone Glaciers and your Kuyus that are just hunting oriented, right? But like a lot of people, in the early days of ultralight, I mean, you were buying mountaineering gear.
Right.
And even some optics, there's some very big optic names out there that decided they didn't want their marketing team to post pictures with animals.
Yeah. Nikon.
Zeiss wasn't
Zeiss.
it? Yeah. Like high dollar optics. I own one. It's a nice scope, but I mean, it's like at the end of the day, whose side are you on?
Right?
Is that the last one?
Yeah. It's like, you're making a scope. What do you think I'm going to do with it? Like, so one of two things, like hunting's the better one.
Yeah.
So
two-legged or four-legged.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, I'll tell you when Butch comes to town, you'd have a blast with him on this show.
Oh, I'd love that.
And I know he'd come and just a really solid guy. Like I said, he's an American, born and raised in Idaho, came up here, got a beautiful family, they're people of faith, but he's just as solid as they come. And he's really built a really cool company. And I got to go down there and see their store, their actual showroom and everything else. And it was really cool to see what he's been able to accomplish. It's just an awesome success story.
That's great. So, hopefully you're able to get him in some stores up here.
Yeah.
And start seeing some more of that gear. Cause I know it used to be carried quite often, but then it's kind of gotten drowned out a little bit.
It has a little bit.
So.
And there's I buy a lot of my stuff online anymore, but people here, they want to walk into a store and put their hands on it. They want to see it and feel it, try it on, whatever.
The brick and mortar store is not lost.
Yeah.
No, they want it to be, but it's not.
So we just need to get more of it readily available on the shelves, the right gear for the right season.
Well, and that's so important for a lot of folks. Cause like for me, for example, I'm 6.5 feet tall.
Yeah. Gorilla
arms. Like most stuff doesn't fit me,
right.
Like an XL might fit my arms,
right.
but way too big around the waist,
right.
Right. But, and a large might fit great around the chest and waist, but come down, showing half my tattoos here, and like, it's just, it goes brand by brand.
Yeah.
Every brand's a little bit different. And so the ability to go try it out and see.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be the most comfortable piece you've ever put on.
Yeah.
But you're not going to know that looking at a picture online.
Yeah.
Right?
And I've worn mine. I've worn it on the other at Kavik. I've worn it on the peninsula. I've worn it in Kodiak. I've worn it all over this state.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I mean, the rain gear, the comfortability, the size, the layering, the systems that they have. It's just, I've got more money in Cryptek than I do in regular clothes. Like,
as
seriously.
You should. Yeah. As you should.
I had a buddy. It's funny you're talking about that because I was just looking at and I don't know the different types. I'm not familiar with them, but a buddy of mine, he sent me, it was an article on how to conceal in the Arctic. And I kind of like, well, a lot of us do. We send each other a bunch of stuff and whatever. And I got bored and I look and it was really cool. And it talked about when you're snow camoing to wear a darker layer up top and a lighter layer on the bottom. And I should know this. I'm an avid predator hunter and I hang out in the Arctic all winter long and tinker. But I started looking at it and then there was like this ad or something right after that. And it was tech, but they had this really cool pattern that kind of cohabitated with like our backdrop. And I'm like, I want to find one of those jackets. Like, and then we're just talking about this.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like 2 days ago.
We'll talk after the show.
Okay. For sure.
I've got some stuff at the house and we'll talk.
All right.
It's awesome. Well, Mike, I think it's about time we wrap up this show. I think we've got plenty for a Monday morning for the folks. So thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind really quickly just reminding them how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in showing up to one of these programs in your events.
Yeah. My phone number is 907-687-0290 or 907-405-0838. And then you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
Perfect.
So feel free to call anytime. And I've had a lot of people already call me and ask information. So like I said, right now we're trying to get a venue to where it's a little easier to meet off post. So we can get more people off post, into our meetings. So
yeah. And there's, I'm sure, plenty off post that would want to be part of this. So
yeah, it'll be great. Like I said, next meeting, fourth Tuesday of this month. I don't know the date of it right offhand, but we'll have local taxidermist, meat processing there. And then next month, I think Gary Junk with Arctic Gun Works is going to come and talk about, bullet selection, rifle selection, optics, everything, gunsmithing and gun care.
Perfect.
And it should be really, really good.
Yeah. So. And from what I gathered in the one that I've been able to visit so far, great community of guys. It's a great place to run into people, talk with people, swap ideas, just chit chat and build that hunting community.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're people just like this, I mean, this is, we're all in the same community, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's what makes, to me, the interior special.
Perfect.
So.
And if you are listening and you're a veteran, it's pretty easy to get a pass as a veteran, just so you know. I didn't realize they had kind of changed the rules since all the craziness happened and the time we do not speak of. But I went in there the other day and just they saw the veteran thing on my ID, and he was like, "Oh yeah, here you go. Yep,
Awesome.
Day pass, easy." So if you're listening to this and you're a veteran, you're not sure if you can get on base. If you got proof you're a veteran, you can. So as long as you haven't done anything since then.
Yeah.
So.
10 arrests, no convictions.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good reason to keep it on base, right? And it's all good guys showing
Yeah,
up.
there you go.
But, anyway, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And
thank you guys. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you guys. I look forward to creating some memories with you guys. So
absolutely. And to everybody listening, thank you so much for hanging in with us this Monday. Hopefully you guys are all having a wonderful day. If you would not mind, go ahead and rate the show. 5 stars is always best. If you could leave us a written review, that's awesome. Helps people know what they can expect when they push the play button. There's also a share button on every single platform. If you found any of this valuable, if you know anybody in the Fairbanks area that would be interested in this outdoor mentorship program, then send this over to them. They can hear all the details and get involved. If you'd like to support what we're doing here at the Northern Hunter, we've got some partners, great people that have decided to partner with what we're doing. They are all on the partners page on our website if you go to thenorthernhunter.com. We've got discount codes with a lot of gear companies. It's all great stuff, some big companies, some small ones. And if you use that discount code, helps them out with growing their company, helps us out to create more content for you guys, which is what we love doing. So we also have the shop there with a bunch of merch and a bunch of hoodies, hats, t-shirts, anything you can think of. And we've got the new design for the summer, the God Save the King hoodie up there right now, hoodie and t-shirt. And I want to say in 2 weeks we'll have one more. Maybe 1 week from the time this drops. Anyway, keep an eye on it. It'll be good. And other than that, thank you once again, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. And until next week, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.